And we are live. Hey, everybody. John St. Baptiste here. We are ready to talk some Norse mythology by Neil Gaiman, and I have a very, very special guest today, Sasuke, who
Hello.
is going to contribute what she's thought of this book, and maybe we'll talk a little bit of music because there's a lot of music that figures into the themes of Norse mythology. Uh, Really quick, say hi to the chat. As I
Oh,
said, we have myself, Sasuke, we have Bear Island Josh, who has a holiday present coming his way in a few weeks because he won the hashtag contest. And I'm pretty excited about that. We have Juliet89, we have Dark Mother, Mackenzie L. Burns, Ron
hey, we got
Haller.
some more people. That's good.
Ron Haller, the one spanner who rules them all, popped in for second. Uh, I need to figure something out because she's my mod, and with the weird time changes between here and Australia, she's gone from being able to mod this whole thing to like I have to say hi and then leave for work
Yeah,
because everything on Australia is like upside down.
it's already tomorrow, so she's from the future,
She
right?
is from the future. She's also from the land of like everything can kill you and half of it's desert, but she holds up pretty well. She's like she teaches judo, if I remember correctly, is the martial
Okay.
art that she teaches. Yeah, she's pretty badass. I have Moralise here on her lunch break.
Hey.
Well, thank you for stopping by. It's good to see you here. Um, so yeah, Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology. Uh, for those of you who've not joined us before, I actually got this copy because this is my deface copy. I do have a copy I don't deface, but yes, for those of you who are sticklers about highlighting and underlining things in books, yeah, I do it. So the story, my stepmom is a travel agent for an airline, and somebody left this in the office, and she's like, "Well, they flew away. John likes Neil Gaiman. I'll give it to him." So Sasa, introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello.
Tell
Uh,
us your secrets.
some of you know me already. I'm Sarah. Hopefully, you've seen me in the chat on John's channel and many others. I read this book about a half a year ago only. Um, and I'm a very, very, very slow reader. So I was very happy that this book was very, it wasn't overwhelming, and he really broke it down in a way that made all of these mythological stories very enjoyable and easy to read, despite not having like a pronunciation guide, for example. Um, and I don't even know where I was going there with that sentence. My brain just sort of called it quits right there. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about these particular chapters because I'm very lucky that John invited me on this particular week with these particular chapters. Are all very enjoyable and at times very funny and times very uh, crazy stories.
Nice. It looks like the West Rosie Ninja joined us.
Hey, Milt.
You're going to be on his channel tomorrow night, right? For
Yeah.
trivia? Nice.
So tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern, you may have seen his postings on Facebook or wherever. And sometimes they pop up as Central Time, so that kind of throws people off. But it's 8 o'clock Eastern if you're in the same time zone as me. And I will be facing off one-on-one Jeopardy, A Song of Ice and Fire, mainly trivia, against Kev from Bridge 4. So come see me get my ass beat at trivia. And if perhaps this stream was a little too early, maybe you could still make the 8 o'clock trivia tomorrow after you've watched the replay of this stream. So there's that.
And he also says that Gaiman wrote a storyline using characters in Norse mythology. Actually, characters from a lot of different mythologies come in and out of a lot of Gaiman's Sandman stories. It's one of the things I've contemplated is doing Sandman, because mostly on the Believe Wednesday streams we talk about Gaiman's work, but it's big. I mean, you can't do more than what was originally an issue, an episode, and that's 72 issues. Like, that's a year and a half. So I don't know how I would do that unless I become independently wealthy and can stream every day. Which I don't see happening soon. But I do have my lottery tickets here, so we might see. The poverty tax is what they call it. But so getting into this, first I love what you said. It's so accessible. Gaiman's really good at writing things the way somebody would tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain moments during this that you feel like you're sitting around a campfire 1,000 years ago and someone's telling these stories. And I think that's pulled off really, really well. It's accessible. It's one of the reasons I love him so much as an author is because he throws a lot of dense things into his work, but you can access it easily, and that is so much harder than it sounds like it is.
Of course. I was going to say, when you were describing noticing the tales being told in a way that you feel like you're just sitting around listening to it, I mean, I think that hopefully is evocative of the way that people 1,000 years ago or so might have learned some of these tales. So there's that.
Right. And what I also love is that it's a take on the artist's own ideas and work, or the artist's own interpretation of the work, which is one of the great things about folklore. Everybody has their own take on it.
Yeah.
Like if I told one of these stories, it would be entirely different than you telling one of these stories.
Oh, of course, because there's going to be different ways that you want to describe certain things or different elements to the story that one person might emphasize versus another, and things that apparently, the way I was speaking before, there's going to be things that I'm just going to completely forget because my brain decides to stop working in the middle of a sentence occasionally. Yeah. But he makes it enjoyable, I think, for people to discover this mythology in a way that, not everybody can perhaps go seek out translations of the poetic Eddas or whatever and have the mental wherewithal to sit and read all of it. So this breaks down some of the main stories within their mythology to give people an idea of the type of stories that these people believed about their pantheon.
Oh, I love the way the introduction had told, imagine you're sitting on a long, cold night. Night doesn't end for months. And this is all you have to do is tell stories to each other.
Yeah, well, they have very little daylight for a long portion of the cold months, for sure.
Iceland actually has the highest alcoholism rate in the world as a country.
That's no good.
Maybe
they're just cold, so they're trying to warm up with some whiskey.
Well, I don't think it's cold. It's
probably the darkness, but
the darkness and then the light. Like
Well, yeah, your brain doesn't get a chance to feel like it's normal, you know? One part of the year you're just sitting in darkness, another part of the year you don't know when day is truly over because it looks like day, but it's 11 o'clock at night. For some people, I think they might be more sensitive to those changes, so they're gonna have, it's more extreme version of a seasonal affective disorder and such, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways,
What's that movie with Al Pacino in it?
there's a lot of movies with Al Pacino.
Right, I know that, but he's like an FBI agent, and he's in Alaska. It's got Robin Williams.
I've never seen this one.
Insomnia.
Oh, that one. Yeah, I never saw that one.
It's pretty good. I remember. We should probably get into what we're supposed to be talking about.
Let's talk about, because I mean, the first chapter that we're covering in itself could be an entire stream. It's such an interesting story.
It's Loki's children. Loki's complicated.
Yeah.
Like that's something I was going into last week. Like trickster gods have that theme that they help and hurt themselves and others just as much and just as often.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know how you wanted to talk about the story. I sort of just wrote very brief. I wrote comments so that basically it's a summary of the whole chapter, and then like little here and there things I noticed, but I don't know what you want to. Do you want to just start from the beginning of the chapter and go in sort of the story order, or just discuss the whole thing?
I'm going to read the first two paragraphs here.
All right, we'll do that.
And then we can talk about thoughts on that, because I think it summarizes Loki as a character. Maybe not so much the rest of this chapter, but Loki as a character. Loki was handsome. He knew it. People wanted to like him. They wanted to believe him. But he was undependable and self-centered at best, mischievous or evil at worst. He married a woman named Sigyn. By the way, I took Latin. My German pronunciation is awful. I always
this is in German. This is Old Norse. I actually put occasionally the names into Google Translate under Icelandic to try to get good approximations, and most of the time they came out pronounced exactly the same as in Norwegian. So.
Oh no, I'm just talking that whole family of languages.
Yeah, they're all related.
I do my best, but if I pronounce something incorrectly, I apologize.
If you pronounce something in a way that I disagree with, I will let you
know. Sigyn, who had been happy and beautiful when Loki courted and married her, but now always looked like she was expecting bad news. She bore him a son, Narfi, and shortly afterwards another son, Vali. Sometimes Loki would vanish for long periods and not return, and then Sigyn would look like she was expecting the worst news of all. But always Loki would come back to her, looking shifty and guilty, and also as if he were very proud of himself indeed.
So yeah, he knew what he was up to. And he hoped that no one else did, but, although Odin dreamed exactly what he was up to and figured it out.
Well, yeah, it gets down to what I've always found is one of the core differences between Loki and Odin, because they're both gods of deceit.
Yeah.
But a trickster god, generally, with one exception that I can think of, generally like screws themselves as often as they screw the other person. Like they're too clever for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like look at Prometheus.
Okay, yeah.
Look at Anansi. A lot of Anansi is African mythology. If you read American Gods, you learn quite a bit about Anansi.
Okay, yeah, I only got through the first portion of American Gods before I had to return it, and I have a friend who's gonna lend it to me soon, so I should be able to read the rest of it finally. But
Good.
some of
Definitely worth
the
watching too. I mean,
sorry,
we
I
were
watched the first season when I was at the same person's house because she has stars and I do not. So, but what was I gonna say? Yeah,
you're
like
talking
Odin, he isn't defined by his trickery, whereas Loki is.
right. I mean, they're both deceitful, but Loki doesn't think things out. He kind of just, I mean, mischievous would be the word. He kind of just does things to do things. But on the same note, like trickster gods are always creator gods, and they always um, make new things happen. Oh, bye, Morley. Have a good day at work.
Bye,
Hope to catch you
Marlene.
in the afterwards. By the way, in your comment section down below, when you do your rewatch, please drop whether you want me to start dropping playlists on Mondays or Saturdays. Because music playlists will be coming up on one or the other. You can drop it in the comments. You can drop it in any of my social media, which you can find in the description. I can only do one playlist a week now. I'm just way too busy, and I'd like to know what people would prefer.
Here you go.
Yeah, Barry Allen Josh says he's the ADD god.
Which one?
Loki.
Oh, I don't know. If he was really ADHD, it would be he wouldn't be as quite as good at. But yeah, he's not a long-term thinker. He's a short-term thinker for sure. Um, you know, he continues to make the same sort of mistakes, because of his impulsivity and what have you. Because enough of the time he somehow squirrels his way out of the deepest consequences. So he's not essentially because he's not getting completely screwed over every single time he f's around with everything. He continues to do the same behaviors. You know what I mean? Does that make
Oh
sense?
yeah.
Yeah.
If
If he was ruined every single time, he would stop being such a jerk or whatever. Or at least he would possibly, think a little harder before he did stuff.
well, we learn it. We learn eventually that actually Loki's biggest trick is really long term, but we aren't going to learn that until the end of the book.
Yeah. So, gotta
But
read that.
these seeds are planted in this chapter.
Oh, sure, yeah. Okay. Well, so
Odin.
Odin. Odin has a dream, and he says, "You have 3 children." He's like, "No, I have 2 sons, Narfi and Vali." Was he said that like Narfi wasn't the best, but that Vali was well behaved or something? And then Odin was like, "No, you have 3 kids. I'm not talking about those." So
Yeah, Narfi does not always listen to his father, and another son, Vali, obedient and restrained.
yeah, a surprising child to come from Loki's loins. But so Odin confronts Loki with the fact that he's been doing it with the frost giantess Angerboda, and he has 3 kids, and that's sort of as much as he says about the kids at this point in the chapter. Just that there's 3 of them, and their mother is Angerboda. Something that I noticed in all of my reading, I think I wrote it down in my notes for the next chapter. Like, I always wondered reading these stories, if we ever get an explanation with like how different a giant is from normal men, or even just like the gods that we're introduced to. How different are these giants that they're interacting with size wise compared to them? Is it, that they look like little specks of dust in comparison, or is it just sort of like, perhaps our little comparison in Game of Thrones of like Tormund versus 1-1 or something? You know, that's always sort of been something
It's
that I've thought about.
always been my impression. We're talking like 6 to 7 meters tall. So
Use feet,
like 30,
please.
30 feet,
30 feet, okay.
30, 35 feet tall. Like they're big.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
part of the
they're
nature.
not like 11 feet, they're not just like two people, they're several people tall.
Yeah. It's always been my impression. There's always been the way things have been depicted, anyway.
Okay.
In gods, like Aesir and Vanya, I mean, they can pretty much take any form they want if they're smart enough.
Yeah.
We learn later
Odin
that Thor's
does.
not smart enough to do that.
Sorry?
We learn later that Thor's not smart enough to do
Yeah,
that.
Thor doesn't naturally always do that. Um,
By the way, for any of you Marvel fans out there, Marvel Thor and traditional Thor are very, very different.
yeah.
Rolling that out there for you. And
Well,
the
I
only thing
remember
the two have in common,
last week's stream, I sort of called Thor the Victarion of the Aesir. But that was just sort of like talking about how he oftentimes was kind of just like a dummy brute. You know what I mean?
yeah,
He's a little more than that. He does figure a couple of things out at times in these chapters, so he's
Oh
not
no!
like,
In the next chapter, we have a moment where Thor's clever and nobody else is, which
yeah,
I find very
it's a
interesting.
rarity.
But most of the time, Thor is interested in rubbing his hammer and finding his hammer,
Yeah, and making it bigger.
playing his hammer and making it bigger.
Yeah,
I mean, and we all know the metaphor that's going on there.
of course. Um. Oh
He's
yeah,
talking about his
and
crops.
sorry.
He's talking about his crops.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
And I think Bear Island Josh reminded us that Loki is part giant.
yeah,
himself, right?
yeah.
So
Loki is a giant. He saved Vota Odin, which I don't think they put that legend in this book, if I remember
yeah.
correctly. They allude to it, they mention it, but they don't actually talk about it. He saved Odin, and they became blood brothers.
Okay, yeah, that's so he is a giant. He's not half giant. He's not related to Odin, but they are blood brothers now. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry. I always confuse that in my head and assume that they are actually related when they are not.
And so he lives with the god, and he was raised as Odin's son.
Yes.
But yeah, he's a giant.
But he's just like a magical giant.
But then on the same note, Odin's parents were giants. So it's
But Odin, his natural form is not necessarily a giant form.
like all gods, I guess, are kind of giants because
they're descendant from the group of people.
Right.
Don't ask me any of their names because he
That's
didn't
one of the
explain them here.
cool yet frustrating things about so many mythologies is that there's so many contradictory things. But like as somebody who studies theology, like there's so many contradictory things in the Bible.
Well, yeah.
Like within the same 4 verses, it says that Noah was at sea for 40 days and 40 nights, and then another one is like 6 months or something like that.
Because it's people that are writing it down, so people are making mistakes and etc. But yeah, like something I noticed about, because I'm not super well versed in different mythologies, like these are Odin is the all father. He's everyone's father in a certain way. He's the most powerful god. He's the head of the Aesir, etc., etc. So in certain ways, especially living in growing up in such a mainly Judeo-Christian society where we have this figure of just God who's created everything or whatever, you see Odin as the Allfather, and then you think, okay, well then he's the one who everything came down from. But no, he had parents, and we don't know as much about like the parental generation of these gods. And it was the same thing with like the Greek and Roman gods too. Like Zeus had parents, but we always think of Zeus as the guy, you know.
Yeah, it's almost any primordial mythology. Like things about progenitors
Yeah,
are really vague.
yeah, they throw them in
Um,
there, but you're not going to learn too much.
I mean, at least from the Eddas that we have that have survived,
Yeah, that's true.
um, Odin's brothers are hardly ever mentioned again.
Yeah, we just know that he did have them.
Yeah, Vili and V. But then we hardly ever hear about them again.
Okay. Well, let's get back into this next part of the story.
I love that you keep me on track.
I have my notes right here, and I want to follow them. So Odin talked to the gods about retrieving Loki's children from Jotunheim, right? That's the giant land.
Yes.
And so he got Thor and Tyr to lead the way, basically. And when they arrived at the home of Angerboda, her kids were just playing in the hall, and they were very shocked at what they saw, and they were also shocked at the fact that, you know, she was nowhere nearby. You know, she wasn't watching over them, and so they took them. And then, do you want to go into how they sort of had to take these kids?
Yeah. Well, I like how Gaiman writes this because he doesn't tell you right away. Like as someone who's familiar with this mythology, I knew what but he doesn't tell you right away. Uh, One is tied to a pine tree. The second is muzzled, and the third child walked beside them, gloomy and disturbing.
Yeah. Oh, and the one with the muzzle also had a leash, so you do get a lot of hints there. With at least the second child. Yeah, and the third child just seems kind of melancholy at first. Well, they did say disturbing, so I guess it's definitely a level above melancholy.
Well, we find out on the next page.
Yeah, we find out pretty much right away.
Hela was the
She
original
was-
goth kid. I mean,
Sorry?
Hela was the original goth kid.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
no, it's just especially when I read this chat, I totally I pictured Lydia Dietz.
You pictured what?
Lydia Dietz
Oh, I don't
from
know.
Beetlejuice.
Sorry?
Winona Ryder's character in Beetlejuice.
Oh, okay. Like, so I do know who that is, but I just haven't heard the name in forever. Okay.
My life is one big dark room. Like, I can totally picture Hela listening to like Joy Division on repeat.
Yeah, like I bet there's some god kids out there that were like, oh, I wish my parents had named me Hell. You know. It's like, okay. Um, so so then they talk a little bit more about this girl, saying that the one half of her face is a very lovely girl, you know, with Loki's eyes and everything. And then the other half of her face is a dead girl. And because I'm obsessed with this character, like my brain flitted to even Sandor Clegane when I read this, because I, in the books, believe that his face in that portion is actually dead. But you know, that's just a weird tinfoil theory of
No,
mine. And I was always, after rereading this story, thinking like, oh, is this perhaps part of the inspiration, or it's just a coincidence?
well, in modern mythology, you have that. In the Batman mythology, you have Two-Face.
Yeah, you have Two-Face.
But in older mythology, you have that too, especially a lot of African mythology. Legba, I believe, is the god who has two halves.
Okay.
And appears different ways to different people. So it's one of the things I love about studying mythology is that it really, um, it's kind of a Campbellian thing for me. Like, you see where there are correlations between cultures that pretty sure never came into contact with each other. I mean, you do have your kind of out there theories about these cultures coming into contact with each other, and I'm not going to debunk them or uh, advocate them, but you do have those theories out there.
Oh, and I want to say we have Katrin C in the chat now,
Oh,
who's actually from Scandinavia, so perhaps she knows a little more
yeah,
than me.
Katrin, if we pronounce anything incorrectly, please
Yeah.
crack the whip.
Yeah.
Because we both took romantic languages in school. You
I
took
learned how
French,
to
right?
pronounce German in order to sing it, but that's about as far as I went.
Well, yeah, it was the same for me in choir. Like, I could say the word, sing the words the way I was supposed to, but yeah, Germanic language, and even some of your romantic languages, like if something's written, there's some operas and some choral pieces out there in Spanish, and Spanish is closer to Latin than any other.
So yeah, Spanish and Italian.
Um,
Spanish I find easy to pronounce because it doesn't tend to break its own rules very much at all. Also, I studied Spanish much longer than anything else as far as other languages go. So there's that.
right.
And it's much easier to find a Spanish language speaker to practice with. I find, at least living in the States.
I get Latin speakers every Sunday.
Well, not really anymore. Ever
Oh
since
no, my
what
church.
is it, Vatican II?
I wake up early just so I can go to Latin mass.
Not a lot of churches will do a Latin mass though.
Yeah, my church does, but it's at like 7 in the morning.
Yeah, because they're like only the diehards are going to come to this anyways, so we're going to make it at a time that they'll do it for us. I don't know.
This is so vain, but one of my favorite things about it is the fact that I'm 42 and I'm 30 years younger than anybody else in the congregation.
Really? Yeah.
It makes me feel young.
Well, the only other people that are there at that time are the people that they remember having to go to mass in Latin because it was still like the thing.
And I know what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, eventually you memorize everything enough, you know what it is anyways. But I took Latin in 6th grade. I remember almost none of it. I know puer and puella and some phrases. But anyways, we're off track again. So speaking of some puers and a puella, so we talked about his daughter. And Thor says to Tyr, have you noticed something weird? After they've already left the land of the giants. And he's like, what? And Thor says, like, they're not following us. Not even Angerboda is following us. Perhaps they wanted us to take these kids. So, and that, drops the idea in the reader's head, like, oh, not just the description of hell is not going to be the only, nefarious or just foreboding or whatever word you want to choose thing about what's going on with these children.
Yeah, and what's funny is that like generally throughout the Eddas, like Tyr's made out to be a pretty clever guy. We actually see that later in this chapter.
Oh yeah, he seems to be very level-headed
and
smart.
Thor points something out, like Thor's dumb ass points something out.
But Thor is, he's, I guess, more of a warrior, and like maybe that's just sort of his natural senses of like he kind of always is taking in his surroundings and worried about that sort of thing. So maybe that's why that his senses were prickled by the fact that, like, oh, we're just walking along just fine with these three creatures.
Yeah, he busts out the Abra Akbar. It's trap.
Yeah. So perhaps it was a trap. Perhaps Angrboda, heaved a sigh of relief when her children were taken away. I don't know. I would
Yeah,
hope that she
I'm
wouldn't.
a paternal parent. I'm not a maternal parent, but
Yeah.
I would imagine that bearing a big snake, a wolf, and then like a kind of normal child,
And a half dead kid.
a half dead kid, is
Yeah,
probably
you have to think
like
like, what the hell is going on with my uterus? What is happening? Like, ugh, my eggs are all poisoned. Um,
it's probably going to be a little physically and psychologically uncomfortable.
yeah. So perhaps she's a little relieved to just not have the constant live reminder of the fact that these things came from her body. But whatever. But they're still her kids, so she probably, was a little sad. At least when it comes to Hell, because as they said, she was a polite little girl. Um, but anyways, so the next child that they talk about in the story is Jörmungandr, um, who is still growing. And when they get to Asgard, they say, watch out, Odin. This child spits venom, and it almost hit me, and that's why we, had to tie his head so strongly to this tree trunk.
Right. And Odin's like, "Oh, I've got this. We'll go ahead and put him where he can't hurt anybody. We'll put him in the sea."
Oh, Mandy's here in the chat. Hey, Mandy. Okay. So anyways, yeah. So yeah, Odin comes up with the idea to put him in the sea where it can't harm people, and he becomes the Midgard snake.
Yes. Which all three of these figures come into play much later in the story.
Yeah, they, there's definitely, even in this chapter, you realize that at least Jormungandr and the next child that we're going to talk about that we haven't talked about yet definitely have importance when it comes to like the end of the world or the end of people.
Or and I think it really gives a lot of definition to Loki's character, because all of the eventual consequences that we will get to at the end of this book come because of the gods' decisions about Loki's children.
Yes.
And it really, I think, gives insight into the character of Loki, which, you can light a trash fire. Now, it's your choice if you're going to keep your hands warm or roll it down to the street into that store window so you can break in. Like, it's all your choice. I'm just going to light a match and throw it in the garbage can. Yeah. Ragnarok was the original dumpster fire, is basically what I'm saying.
Okay. Never thought of it as a dumpster fire, but now apparently I'm going to forever. So they mention, after Odin takes care of Jormungandr, they mention Hel again, and they ask her, she says, quote, "I like the dead best of all, because they're the only ones who treat her with any respect, because human beings are afraid of her or treat her like something disgusting."
Right.
Which kind of makes sense because she is half dead.
Like, literally.
So Odin decides that she will rule her part of the underworld, basically where any non-warrior deaths would end up, any accidental deaths, any deaths from illness, anything that wouldn't bring you to Valhalla, you're going to go and be with Hel for eternity.
Childbirth was the one that I found that was interesting, because in most warrior cultures, women who die in childbirth are on par with warriors who fight, who die in the battlefield.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to me that that's not included.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of crappy regardless. If, you know, if neutral deaths, you still wind up in hell, you know, and it's not the same hell that, you know, people in a Christian society or whatever think of, but you don't get to see, you know, the only way to get to the good afterlife is to be, you know, murdered in the middle of a war, essentially.
Yeah, well, that
Um,
to be valiant, to
yeah, to deserve this great honor of.
Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori.
Sorry, I didn't hear you there.
Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. It's the greatest honor is to die for your country.
Okay.
It's a really cool poem by, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. It was written after World War One. Definitely read it though.
Okay.
If I can remember his name, it's probably going to hit me like right after we get off the stream.
And that poet was from here or from where?
Britain.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, I mean that stinks. It like all accidental deaths, any illnesses, but yeah, the childbirth, they kind of like almost lumped in childbirth with either an accidental death because you know you don't know that it's going to wind up in your death, or I guess lumping it in with illness because it is, you know, the blood loss and the infection and whatever else that kills a woman in the end. But anyways, and then she says something along the lines of like, my bowl will be hunger and my knife will be famine and my bed will be called sick bed. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh, what a creepy ass child, but whatever.
But I love it, and I love that it gives into the whole quality of this book that it sounds like somebody telling a story,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really, really awesome.
Cool.
And
Oh, Bear Island Josh says Rob Zombie wrote a song about her. You mean Hell?
yeah, Living Dead Girl.
Oh, got you. Yeah, I'm. Unfortunately, I wasn't a huge Rob Zombie fan. The only one that I really know is No More Human Than Human, but that's just because you couldn't avoid that song at a certain point in time in the 90s. But now I know. I can look
Well,
up
that was
a
when
song
he was
about
with
Hell.
White Zombie.
Oh yeah. That's the group. That's not him by himself.
He had to find other artists after their third album who could deal with his workaholism,
Oh.
because none of them could. Like Rob Zombie's seriously like this major, insane workaholic. He'll spend like 18 hours in the studio on 16 bars.
Why not?
Like
I mean, 16 bars is like not that much.
exactly. Yeah, that's the yeah. It's insane, but
That's maybe two phrases, if not just one.
yeah,
Yeah.
the stuff he puts out is pretty freaking awesome, though.
Yeah. Well, then he's going to keep doing it if it's getting him the results he wants. So just because I'm noticing like how much time we've already taken and we're not even done with this first chapter, I'm going to move on to the remaining child, the second child that was mentioned at first, whose name is Fenrir.
Yes,
Or
Fenrir.
Fenris Wolf.
And this, I think, reiterates what I was talking about. Like the gods make their own bed with Loki's children.
Yeah. And Fenrir is the best example of like how things could have been done differently. And perhaps it would have meant a lot of different things for the gods in the end.
Yeah, because
Not just the end of this chapter, in the end of everything.
yeah, because they bind him, and they're like, "Oh, we just want to see if you can break out." And he, boom, hey, whatever.
So the only, while they were traveling back to Asgard, Tyr did sort of bond with the puppy Fenrir.
Yeah, but
Um,
he's a little puppy.
yeah, because a cute little tiny wolf puppy, like all those tiny dire wolves were in the first episode where we saw them. Look at how adorable they were, and they were so fluffy. But
Tyr's like a dire wolf on steroids, or not Tyr.
yeah, Fenrir.
Fenrir.
Fenrir is like a house-sized dire wolf. Um, So, he liked to play with him as a puppy, but even when they just got back to Asgard, it was already huge, and they noticed it was growing basically too fast. Every single day, it would be even bigger, and every single day, it would require even more food. So they were getting real scared of what this meant for them because, this is a wolf, this is not just a child. Um, so they decided to bind Fenrir, um, and they presented these chains and such to Fenrir as sort of a challenge, a game, so that he would go along with it. Even though Fenrir was smart enough to be wary of the whole situation from the get go and got more wary of it as it went on. Hold on, what happened to my video? Did the video keep going? Did I just press pause on my video? Oh,
Yeah,
hey, Forrest. Okay.
yeah. I think you just press pause. Just hit refresh.
Let
You
me
should
make
be
sure I'm
fine.
live. Okay. Yeah, I probably just hit something on my tablet screen. Sorry, guys. So yeah, I noticed I wrote it in the chat before, but every time you see me looking down, it's either at my notes or if you see me looking down for a long time, it's me trying to type something in the chat. So I apologize that you're seeing like the top of my head often. So the gods decided to challenge him with some very strong bindings. He snapped the first one. Um, and then they decided to get the strongest metal they possibly could find, challenged him again. And, Tyr was always the one who sort of talked to him more than anybody else, because he was not as afraid of him because he knew, he'd known him since he was little.
Treated him
Um,
like a proper being.
yeah, treated him like a person because while he was a wolf, he spoke with a man's voice. Um, So they put the extra strongest metal they could get, uh, bindings on him, and eventually he busted through those too. And didn't they make some a note of like that they are still finding little metal chunks in various places from when he ripped through these
Yeah.
bindings, correct?
Which once again gets back to what I think is so awesome that Gaiman does. He throws in things to make it sound even more like uh, verbally communicated mythology,
Mm-hmm.
because like he does this in a lot of his books when somebody's telling a story and it picks up like another myth that really has nothing to do with it, but like that's why we find iron all over the place, is because he broke those chains.
Yeah.
Or if you read Sandman, the reason they find the reason that the Weaver bird is black is because he flew too close to the sun. Like, and it's just like a spot off moment, and for a second, that's one of the things I've always loved about this author is that he over one thing, I think he's an absolute treasure. As I put him on par with any classic author. I think he's a modern classic author. But he also, yeah, when he's writing something that's supposed to sound mythological, he throws in these random. I always use the metaphor that, uh, like, uh, Charles Dickens would, who wrote episodically,
Okay.
would just throw balls up in the air, and sometimes he'd catch them, and sometimes he wouldn't. But when you're writing episodically, you have to. If you when you're writing a novel, if you need a gun in the drawer, great example,
Mm-hmm.
on page 320, you put that gun in the drawer in page 38.
Yeah.
And when you're writing a novel, you can go back and do that.
Yeah.
When you're writing episodically, you need that those random guns in the drawer.
Yeah.
You know, and
Gotta throw some stuff in there.
and Gaiman always said one of the biggest things he learned from writing a comic where he had to be out every month was to write episodically. Was to throw balls up in the air. And it's also intriguing because I think George R. R. Martin, who I know you're a huge fan of, does this a lot, where he'll put something in there and it's never mentioned again.
And like 3 books later.
Or it might not even be mentioned 3 books later. And people are obsessing over it.
There.
And they're putting up YouTube videos about, what this or that meant. And it was just like some cast off thing that for the writer, as
like,
a writer,
where is Pyrick Lannister?
I might use, I might not use, but it's there. It's a tool in my toolbox.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, so Fenrir clearly busted through anything they could manage themselves. So Odin approached the light elf Skirnir, who used all these crazy ingredients like the footsteps of a cat. And
I think it's
what happened?
I think it's Skirnir.
Yes, Skirnir.
I'm not positive.
Yeah. Well, let me put it in my Google Translate with the Icelandic pronunciation and see what it says. But anyways, so they approach him to create like the strongest thing he possibly can with all these, different sort of ingredients. Like, wasn't one like the beard of a woman or something?
Firstly, the footsteps of a cat. Secondly, the beard of a woman. Thirdly, the roots of a mountain. Fourthly, the sinews of a bear. Fifthly, the breath of a fish. For sixth and lastly, the spittle of a bird.
Oh, there we go.
And then I love what Gaiman says here. Each of these things were used to make Gleipnir. You say, you have not seen those things. Of course you have not. The dwarfs used them in the crafting.
Okay.
Like, that's what I'm talking. Like, it feels like somebody's just talking to you around a fire, telling you the story.
All right, here's how the computer tells me to say Skirnir. Oh, that came out real creepy. I don't even know if it picked it up, but but I could probably pronounce it in a different related language. But it says that it translates in Icelandic his name Skirnir or whatever to skirt or alternatively baptism, which I'm just like, did that come through?
Yes.
It's super, Mr. Roboto or whatever. But yeah, so he got to make Gleipnir. And then by that point, Fenrir was like, I don't think this is a game. I think you're trying to deceive me, Odin. I'm not going to do this. And then Odin proceeds to basically taunt him. It's like, oh, so you're a coward. Yeah, so you're just a coward because you don't want people to think that you wouldn't take on the challenge of being tied up with this ribbon. And that's what eventually, he gets under Fenrir's skin enough to have Fenrir relent and let himself be tied up with this ribbon. And of course, because it's a magical elven ribbon, it holds him tight.
Yeah, you have you lie, all father. You lie in the way that some folk breathe.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, that sums Odin up, or at least Gaiman's interpretation of Odin across all of his work. And I generally agree with it. I've always felt that way since I was a little kid and started reading these myths. But like, Odin's a tricksy bastard. But I love that line. You lie in the way that some folk breathe. and that shows you, yeah, in his own way, Odin's a deceitful god, but he's not a trickster god. He doesn't have that trickster motif.
Yeah, he's not like Loki at times. Almost, he's doing it for his own amusement half the time. You know.
Yeah, and half the time he's doing it to help everybody.
Well, yeah, and half the time he thinks it's going to get a positive thing in the end, but Odin is deceiving when he feels he needs to. Like it's like serious deceit versus playful deceit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, Fenrir, of course, suspected that this was trickery. Eventually said he would do it. But he said, okay, the only way I'm going to allow you to tie me up with this ribbon is I will take one of you have to volunteer to put your hand in my mouth. And if, after you tie me with this ribbon, you let me go, nothing will happen to said hand. And if, and if you are tricking me, I'm going to bite that hand off.
Right. And all the gods are reticent to do so.
Yeah, all the gods are a bunch of pussies and don't want to do it because they know it's a trick.
Right, except for Tyr, who knows what's going on, and he's still like,
gotta do it.
Hey, the puppy trusted me.
Yeah.
I once again, I made this bed. Now, it's one of the things I like about Norse mythology as compared to a lot of world mythologies, is that there are quite often consequences for actions.
Yeah, it's not just like, and the gods got to do whatever they want because they're gods.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I did a freaking thesis paper on the Iliad. Like,
okay,
Greek gods are mercurial at best.
Yeah.
And batshit nuts at worst.
Of course.
And they never have to really pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
People have to pay for it.
Yeah.
People have to pay
for it. People that are who have to deal with all the consequences all the time.
I mean, look at Zeus, the serial rapist, and everything. He never had any consequences, but both his progeny and his partners did.
Yeah.
Who's gonna fuck a swan though? Like, seriously. That's one of those things that always got me. Like, even when I was a kid, I was like, this isn't right. I mean, swans are cool and all, but like, seriously, they're mean.
Yeah, they're aggressive. Whatever. So you're reminding me, like, I haven't studied Greek mythology in a super long time, and just reminding me of some of the stuff that I probably appreciate that I forgot. So anyways, so now Tyr gets his hand bit off.
Yes.
Which is what all of us Song of Ice and Fire nerds know about the connection between that name and then, it's not, George wasn't super direct. He didn't make Tyrion lose the hand. He made Jaime lose the hand.
Yeah, none of the gods really even care.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, well, you lost your hand. Sorry. I wasn't going to do it. But, and then, and Fenrir, of course, is then angry with Odin and, says to him, I would have been good to the gods. I would have been a friend of the gods, but you did this to me. And now, you will regret this. When the end of the world comes, I will eat the sun and I will eat the moon. And,
But I will take the most pleasure in killing you.
Yeah. So, oh well. And before that happened, I forget who it was. Somebody stuck a sword in Fenrir's mouth too. So his mouth is
can't clamp shut.
Yeah, it's permanently open. So he's just drooling this river of water into the lake that he's by the whole time. So, he didn't go into great detail about what's up with that particular body of water, just sort of mentioned it. That was even like sadder because now Fenrir can't even just sit there or can't talk, I guess, at this point.
Can't whinge and moan.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can whinge and moan in pain, but he can't say things. Anyways.
But I love this paragraph that is at the end here. That the gods left the place where the river of saliva flowed down into the dark lake, and they did not speak. But once they were far enough away, they laughed some more and clapped each other on the back and smiled the huge smiles of those who believe they have done something very clever indeed.
Yeah. Except for Tyr. Tyr is not smiling. Tyr is not laughing.
Right.
He's just cradling his stump.
Stump.
Yeah. He's silently cursing them all, probably. Oh, hey, Bobby Catalano.
Hey, Bobby. Good to see you. Bobby will be on Friday night for Silent John's, if anybody can make it. We're talking about the season 3 finale, which is an awesome episode. Don't know if you've watched Battlestar, but you have about 72 hours to catch up if you want to. It's only like
I don't know if
episodes.
I would be able to make it through the amount of episodes I would have to, even if I stayed up for those full 72 hours. Plus, I have to, tomorrow night I have to go and do the one-on-one Jeopardy on Milt's channel. So that's at least a little bit of time that I can't be binging Battlestar.
True.
But yeah, one of these days maybe I will watch a bunch of it, and plus I want to watch after every episode. I want to watch an old Silent John's episode that went over the episode I just watched. So it's going to take me more than twice the amount of time. Because you told me that you could have significantly long episodes. But anyways, so we're already an hour in. So perhaps we should move on to
significantly long episodes.
Perhaps we should move on to chapter 7, which is about Freya's interesting wedding.
Freya's unusual wedding. Yeah. I'm going to get up for one moment. I will be right back. I apologize.
Okay.
We have some people who don't usually come here. So Mandolin523, good to see you. As I said before, Bobby, Forrest. I think you live somewhere in
Europe,
Scandinavian language Europe, if I remember correctly. So please correct any pronunciation.
You can tell us, but
I'll be back in a moment. In the meantime, somebody tell a really dirty joke.
Okay, well, hopefully John can hear me when I explain this. So at the beginning of this chapter, with Freya's unusual wedding, it kind of starts with, Thor thinking, he wakes up, his hammer isn't where he expects it to be. He reaches his hand out, can't feel his hammer. So he's stressed out. He's looking around. He still can't find his hammer. And it reminds me of the opening words to a 90s classic by King Missile, where the guy is like, I woke up one morning and my penis was missing. It's detachable. So when I read this first part of the story, because I'm a pervert or something, I immediately thought of the song Detachable Penis by King Missile. And if you don't know that song, then you're really missing out. It's ridiculous. I love it. Forrest is from the Balkans, right? So she's from Kosovo and speaks German. Interesting. I like it. So she can also correct pronunciation of some of these terms, these Proto-Norse terms that we're using. So anyway, Thor is very uncomfortable with the fact that his hammer is missing. He knows it's dangerous for both him and the Aesir that it's missing. And I wrote in here somewhere, maybe this is from a little later in the story, but he's not comfortable with his masculinity now that his hammer is gone. His detachable penis that he rubs to make bigger. he goes to Loki, correct?
Yeah, well,
Um, and
I
then they
think
go to Freya.
here. Sorry, everybody. I have the bladder of a gopher.
Huh.
There were things Thor did when something went wrong. The first thing he did was ask himself what happened if what had happened was Loki's fault. Thor pondered. He did not believe even Loki would have dared steal his hammer. So he
Mhm.
did the next thing he did when something went wrong, and he went to ask Loki for advice.
Yeah. So he's like, well, somebody tricked me, so I'm gonna need a trickster to help me out. Figure out how I was tricked. Um, so they
I'm sorry, this is a bit of a
go
tangent.
ahead.
You ever play Dungeons and Dragons?
No,
Okay.
although Mandolin and I are possibly in a Game of Thrones RPG game that we're hoping gets off the ground. That was started with some people from Friday Night Trivia, but that's about as close as I get to actually playing.
If I were free on Friday nights, I would totally hit you guys up over that. But
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, there's a lot of
we have silent jokes.
overlap there with that.
And
Yeah.
then I have to get right to bed because I have to get up early on
You have
Saturday.
to work on Saturday. Yeah.
But so in Dungeons and Dragons, you have and I think pretty much any RPG system has a form of this, but you have wisdom and intelligence.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite quotes of all time, and this goes back to first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons back in 1977. Gary Gygax, who was one of the creators, he said, "The difference between wisdom is intelligence is that I'm intelligent enough to know every single chemical in the cigarettes that I smoke that are going to kill me, and I'm not wise enough to quit." And that to me defines Loki,
Okay.
like in a nutshell.
Sorry, I'm chatting. Um, yeah, like he's intelligent enough to know what to do, but he's just not. He hasn't wisened up enough to know that he shouldn't continue to screw around or whatever. Um.
It was pretty funny when he cut off Sif's hair, though.
Oh yeah. But I mean, then that created a whole new set of challenges for him, though.
I
To
mean, that's another thing about trickster gods. Their stories are funny. They're fun to tell.
yeah, they're not
And a
just
lot
like,
of times
and
they're
then this
really
happened.
raunchy. A lot of times they're really raunchy. They're really dirty. You look at coyote stories, like Native American coyote stories,
Mm-hmm.
really raunchy. Like,
Oh, well, I got something new I gotta do then tonight. I gotta look up a bunch of coyote stories.
yeah,
Um,
most of them involve sex, feces, or both.
hmm, okay. Um,
Not like a Jvanet film.
not like particular subgenres of pornography. You mean? So, anyways, I'm not kink shaming. But so there's this whole portion of the story they go into then where they find out what has happened. Um, his hammer was taken by Thrym, uh, who's an ogre, uh, and he's like, I've hidden it so deep in the earth, and da 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 da, and you'll never get it back. Um, and so they ask him like, yeah, but what do you want so we can get it back? Um, and he asks for
Freya's cloak.
Freya's hand in marriage.
Well, yeah, but first he asked for Freya's cloak so he
Oh
could figure out what
yeah.
happened.
So before Loki can go find out what has happened,
And she's
he
like,
gets
"No fucking way."
yeah. And then
And then
he
he's
says,
like, "Thor's
"Oh,
hammer was stolen," and she's like, "Oh,
Mjolnir is stolen. Oh well, shit. Yeah, here's my cloak." So and then
the double entendre that's going on through this entire story is just brilliant."
sorry.
The double entendre that's going.
Oh, double entendre, yeah.
Story.
The so Loki is trying to weasel out a deal with this ogre, and he asks for Freya's hand in marriage because, is Freya still the most beautiful? Da 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 da. Yes, she is. And so Loki knows this is not going to work. But at the same time, eventually he's like, he has to say, okay, I'll get her to marry you. So they approach Freya, and her reaction is exactly what it should be.
I'm sorry.
I said her reaction is exactly what it should be. Like, no effing way. You guys are disgusting. I hate you so much. Leave.
Yeah. I do have to say one of my favorite lines in this entire chapter before that is Loki recognized that sort of chuckle. Sometimes he did it himself.
Yeah.
When he's talking about his conversation with friend. It's like, oh, hey, yeah, I might not be the only clever person here. But yeah, Freya's reaction, yeah, I'd be like...
Exactly. And, she, if she was a more, if she wasn't as calm of a goddess as she is, if she was a more violent goddess, she would have, tried to inflict some hurt on them. But she just kicked them out and then refused to talk to them. So...
Oh, and there's one... I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt you. There's one other line while Loki has Freya's cloak.
Okay.
That I really like. And that's, beneath Loki, the world seemed very small. He looked down at the trees and the mountains, tiny as children's playthings. And the problems of the gods seemed a small thing also. It's just like dropped in there, and then nothing said about it again.
Yeah, by the way, this is nothing compared to like the entirety of the world or whatever.
It's an immaculately conceived paragraph, and it's also really cool in regards to the whole story.
Mm-hmm. So then Loki presents his plan to Thor, which is that they are going to dress Thor up as Freya in her wedding gown and her wedding veil, and deceive these ogres into thinking that Thor is Freya until the time that they can get back Thor's hammer. And so Loki transforms himself into a lovely little maidservant and says, "How do I look?" And then apparently Thor mumbled something in response to that, but Gaiman does not say what Thor's like little muttering to himself about how Loki looks as his maidservant is. But what is you guys in the chat? What do you think Thor mumbled about how Loki looked as the maidservant?
Yeah, and also there's the fact that I made a very specific note here in the text about that, because Thor has to get dressed up and do all these things to change his appearance. Odin doesn't.
Yeah, everybody else just morphs.
And I think that and then you have Sif, who's a fertility goddess who can't grow her hair back. Just grow her hair back. Like, oh hey, my head was shaved. Hair.
Yeah, so occasionally their power isn't as all encompassing as you would think.
Well, and I think it also tells the nature of these deities, that ones who can change are capable of just being whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
Like we see Odin in so many different forms. We see Loki in so many different forms. Thor's
just Thor. Thunder. And Thor is even has even less power now that he's lost his hammer.
Right.
So, again, he's really questioning, he's not comfortable with his masculinity now that he has to be dressed up like a blushing bride. And I love that they're like, oh yeah, just this little bride veil is totally going to cover your massive beard and everything else. But and this is where I made a note to myself of like, what are the actual sizes of these gods versus giants and ogres and stuff? Because like that always threw me off too. If like a giant wanted to get married to Freya, and Freya is just a, I mean, I guess this is an ogre, not a giant per se, but it's essentially a giant, right? It's just like an uglier giant. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's
hard to
one
say
of those things that's
from
never
this
really made
particular book.
clear.
Yeah.
And like Western ogres are so much different than Eastern ogres. Like Oni are like Western ogres are like big dumb brutes. Oni are like big smart brutes. I don't know how much Japanese mythology you're familiar with, but
Zero.
you'll see Onis tattooed on people's bodies, especially if they're
I've heard the term, but I don't. I that's
members of certain elite groups of Japanese people.
okay.
It's a very common tattoo, but it's also become a pretty common tattoo in the West. But like, yeah, like ogre in Eastern culture and ogre in Western culture are so vastly different of a concept. But yeah, I think he's just yeah, like an uglier giant.
Yeah. Like it's sad that now because of modern culture, like I hear ogre, I think of Shrek. Um, but at the same time, perhaps you know our modern, at least Western idea of an ogre is probably somewhat influenced by these stories here. So,
Yeah, exactly.
um,
But
but
yeah, what do you think Thor muttered under his breath? Because Loki turned into this rather attractive woman.
and he's, I mean, I'm hoping that he was just muttering like, "I still wouldn't fuck you," but
Oh, and then Peter Griffin, who just joined us,
hey, Peter.
thinks of Ogre from Revenge of the Nerds. Nice.
I haven't seen that in a very long time.
We should do a watch party.
a live a live watch, maybe.
If I ever do a Patreon, which people keep telling me I should do, and I'm like, no,
But
I don't.
it's useful because you're putting out a lot of content. It's another way for people to show their appreciation, but at the same time, you have to give something to people for those tiers so of different contributions.
Well, for me,
So
it's
then it
just,
creates more work for you at the same time. Whereas if you don't want more work, then you're just going to keep going as is.
well, it's not just that. They're in this isn't braggadocio. There are content creators who rely far more
Of course.
on for me. This I do for enjoyment. I
Yeah.
This isn't my job.
This is
It
not
feels like
this
it
is not
sometimes.
a job amongst other jobs or a singular job. You have your main job, and this is
Right.
for entertainment only for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot of work, but it's still like you're enjoying this, so you're going to continue. Yeah, cool.
But
Oh, Bear Island Josh says he was muttering, "You were hotter as a horse."
oh, nice.
um, let's see.
That's a very nice reference.
I forgot about. I know that story was one we just covered. You just covered last time, right? The horse one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I like it. Okay. So um let's see. I didn't write as many notes for this chapter for some reason, just because I'm like, I'm gonna remember all of it. It's so great. But it would have been helpful if I wrote down more stuff
Well,
just
that's
so like,
okay.
okay, this is where we left off.
I have notes and stars and highlights. Uh,
So they then have to do
they
they
go
walk.
visit the Giants. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna go do this." And I love that you don't hear what or you don't see what he's talking about, but the giant Thrym is like, "Hey, get this out of the yard, cover it up or something." We
Yeah,
have
this
the
has to be perfect for Freya. She's the most beautiful
right,
goddess of all. Yeah. So at least he appreciates that Freya is, let's just say, out of his league.
Well, and also, I just love the juvenile scatological humor that's thrown into so much Norse mythology.
Well, I think they were just like more okay with. They weren't as like uptight as we are about that stuff.
Oh
They
no,
felt
I'm 10 times as uptight as most Americans, and most Americans are extremely uptight about things like that. But I love that they're just like, oh hey, cover up the horse shit because she's coming in.
she's got to walk on it. At least put like a little tiny thing over the horse shit so that although she can smell it, she's not touching it.
Exactly.
So, but like,
No, I'm
I
sorry,
think
ox
that all
shit,
the time.
ox shit,
What?
ox shit. Not
Oh
horse
yeah,
shit.
yeah, all sorts of shit. But you have to think too. Back way back when too, like all the smells just had to be more intense in many ways. Like we have different smells now, but like people had to smell so much worse just because like they weren't bathing all the time, they didn't have deodorant, so like things were just stinkier in general. Um, and you were
Oh,
just
I love it. There's an issue of Sandman. There's this character. Have you read Sandman?
no, I've not.
Well, there's this character named Hob who made a bet, and he said people just die because they think they're supposed to. So Dream, the Sandman, actually makes a bet with it. He's like, okay, show up here in 100 years. And he talks to his sister, Death, and he's like, will you grant this man just eternal life as long as he wants it? And so they meet every 100 years. And in one of the last issues of the comic, he goes to a Renaissance festival with his girlfriend. And, he's trying to play himself off as a normal person in the modern day. But, he knows these things because he's been around since the 14th century. And he's like, this is so unrealistic. The first thing they should do is just spray everybody with shit. Like, just spray everything and everybody with shit. Just shit all over the place. Pig shit, cow shit, horse shit, people shit, cat shit. If they want to make it realistic, that's what they need to do.
Oh, to make the Renaissance Festival very
Right.
realistic? Okay, I was like, for some reason, my brain didn't make that connection, probably because I was typing for at least a certain portion of when you were talking. Oh, let's see. Alicia
What I'm
has
saying
joined
is
us.
like,
Sorry.
oh, I'm just saying, like, what's so interesting is that there's that character, and he's like, I lived at this time. Like, I know.
Yeah, I remember these smells. Yeah.
Like, everything is just covered in feces.
Yeah. Well, Alicia, who just joined us,
Hey,
said
hey, okay.
she couldn't imagine living in the Middle Ages if she was lowborn, especially nobles and royals at least could like they had stuff to cover up some of the smells and they could like distance themselves from it a little bit, whereas the common folk like it was just right there. Well, like we've all seen scenes in various television shows and movies and stuff where there's just people just dumping buckets of shit out the window or whatever. I was um watching. I don't normally watch their channel, but last night, Order the Green Hand had an artist on. I can't think of his name right now because he was commissioned to do the cover for the Clash of Kings graphic novel or whatever. And people were asking like, okay, for these two chapters, what scene should we pick for the cover of this story? And it was everybody was like, oh yeah, do the bread riot scene, do the bread riot scene, and everybody was saying, do the part where Joffrey gets hit in the face with shit. And it's like these people just had shit at the ready, because shit was everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, AK, don't feel
Yeah,
bad
it's the same
for
guy that
sounding
did
douchey.
Drunken Egg illustrations.
Oh, I was just telling AK, don't feel bad for sounding bougie because I epitomize bourgeois. That's what I do.
Okay. All right. So where were we in our actual story? So
The courtyard full of shit.
yeah, we were in the courtyard covering up the shit, as Loki and Thor made their approach after walking all the way from Asgard, because they couldn't both take the cloak. And
They walked. They took Thor's chariot.
oh yeah, shit. Okay. But he uses later he uses the fact that they walked as an excuse for why Freya doesn't look quite as initially gorgeous as she might normally, because oh well oh no, she's been up straight for 8 days and 8 nights just with her love for you, and that's why she looks a little off.
This is a recurring thing in a lot of folklore and mythology. Is the three questions and the three deceitful answers.
Okay.
I forget what motif that is on the scale. Like there's this I can't even remember the mythologian, but he broke down like basic motifs across world mythology about different stories told in different manners, but it's essentially the same story.
Okay.
But the three questions and the three misleading yet honest answers, and yeah, I thought that was pretty cleverly put in.
Yeah. All right. I didn't write a ton of notes about what happens next, because my notes sort of cut off until it talks about later at the dinner, when he was when Thor was approached by Thrym's sister, when Loki had gotten up. But I know that there's a lot that happens in between.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, continue.
I was saying first he does she hasn't eaten in 8 days and 8 nights.
Yes.
And that's why an ox.
That's the excuse why he ate like a whole ox, all the salmon, and
salmon
all
the size
pastries.
of a 10-year-old.
Sorry.
All the sweet. Ate salmon the size of a 10-year-old.
Oh yeah, okay.
And all the sweet. I fish like a salmon the size of a 10-year-old. I didn't have the equipment to fish for one of those.
Yeah. But these people, these are ogres, giant beings, so maybe they could deal with these like.
Yeah. Look at that. That's not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's not going to pull in 130 pounds.
Who knows? But yeah, I personally don't like salmon, so I would not be able to eat any of that. I wish I did because it's good for you. But anyways, yeah. So let's see. Oh yeah, Bear Island Josh says, "What is your name? What is your quest? What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?" So, and Peter Griffin says about the fish, bare hands or it doesn't count. So they're at the dinner. He's eating all the food. All the women are really pissed at Freya because she ate all their snacks. And then eventually, I forget why Loki got up. I don't remember. And Loki, managed to, like, Thor was really afraid. He's like, he's going to make me sit next to him. And what if he tries to touch me? What if he tries to, we're not going to get away with this if he's sitting next to me. And Loki says, oh, don't worry. I'll sit between you and say this is our custom. And da da da.
We got to, because Thrym wanted to talk to him.
Oh, yeah. He wanted to ask him something.
And then he asked him about Thor's eyes looking so terrified.
Oh, yeah. And that was because of the.
And Loki goes,
the lack of sleep, right?
For 8 days and 8 nights.
Yeah. Like, but I think it was like they even noted that it wasn't just that the eyes look crazy, like the brows were clearly not a woman's brows. And I'm just so amazed. It's like, and nobody noticed that he had a full beard.
We had a veil on.
But I mean, like, this veil must have been like, how the hell did I guess the veil was not covering the eyes, but covering everything else.
Well, yeah. It was
It
a
was more like
veil,
one of
and then
these.
he had a coronet, which is like
Yeah, there.
a,
Okay.
a delicate crown.
Okay. So, because I was like, because whenever I think veil, I think modern times, obviously, and all the veils are super see through because you have to be able to see to walk down the aisle or etc. So like the whole time I was fighting
I'm
my
an Irish Catholic. You know how many veils I've seen in my life?
yeah. I'm not going to use my mother's veil, but that would also require me getting married. Um, but what's it called? Sorry, just trying to see if it said something. Oh, she didn't have time to pluck her brows, says Manny. But anyways, so in the meantime, when Loki has gotten up to speak to Thrym, his sister, who I don't think they gave her name, I think they just said it was his
No,
sister,
they just say his sister.
yeah. And she is aggressive AF.
I have a copy of the Eddas. It's not unpacked yet, but I should have all my books unpacked by next week. So if I think it's in the Eddas, I will drop that if if that happens.
Cool.
I'm really lazy about unpacking because I know I'm leaving this place in a year. Like,
Yeah, I just kind of want to let it be. See, but what I wrote down as my notes for like I wrote Thrym sister, yikes. Give me your rings, you know. Just give me a bunch of your rings. You're gonna need protection here. You're different here. Da da da. Super aggressive. I want your rings. I want your rings. I want your rings. And like I immediately thought a little bit of Gollum, but
well, not just that. You're sitting next to Loki. I mean, you got Thor on one side and Loki like 2 seats down, and you're sitting here saying, like trying to con the dumbest guy in existence, but you got Loki here, like, yeah, that's. Oh, you're gonna protect her
yeah.
when she gets there and so forth. Like, yeah, no, probably not gonna happen.
Well, but wasn't Loki standing away from them at that time? And that's the whole reason the sister is standing
Yeah,
away.
you're right. It was during the conversation. Still, um,
But yeah, like if this is
according to
Freya,
legend, Loki hears all lies.
yeah. And then I didn't write anything else down about what happened. And obviously, so I didn't write any notes about when they actually got the hammer back. But you know, Loki gets him to actually present the hammer because that's the deal.
It takes 4 giants to lift it, and they put
Yeah.
Thor's lap.
Even though Thor describes it as very small initially.
Well, the handle's really
The
small.
handle is
That's
small.
really
The hammer is not. Yeah. Okay. So you know,
I wonder what they're alluding to there.
moose knuckle. But anyways, and if anybody understood what I meant there, you're just as filthy as I am. Congratulations. Um, so, and then all I wrote after, you know, after they went through everything, they killed everyone. They just that hammer murdered everybody, got them all out of the way, and the last thing Thor has to say about it was like, "And I had a good dinner."
Yeah, I've got my hammer back, and I had a good dinner. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I like the wording that Gaiman used about Thrym's sister, who received a bridal gift she had not been expecting.
Yeah, exactly.
And now we'll go into part 3,
Chapter 8,
chapter
The
8,
Mead of Poets.
the Mead of Poets. First,
So,
I do have a few announcements to make. If you've watched Harlots, please go over to Mackenzie L. Burns' channel. It
yeah,
is
in 2
in the
hours.
description down below. They're going to be discussing that tonight. I do
I
not
think it's
think
episodes 1 and 2.
yeah, it's episode 1 and 2. I don't know if I'll have time to watch it all before then, but I would. I'm definitely catching up, especially because one of my favorite actresses in this show. Sarah, you've already told us what you're working on right now, things you're doing.
Yes. There's if this is my chance to plug or whatever. Um,
Plug away.
Oh, the only other thing I'm going to mention, and I will mention this tomorrow night also when I'm on Milt's channel doing the one-on-one trivia against Bridge 4 tomorrow, 8 p.m. West Coast Ninjas channel. But it's November, and November is Diabetes Awareness Month. And as a type 1, I always like to remind people of that. And it completely sucks. And you should know the warning signs that you have it. And it's that month. So just reminding you, if you are excessively thirsty, excessively peeing, excessively hungry, losing weight for no reason, possible changes in vision, and other weird stuff is happening to you, perhaps that could be wrong, especially if it runs in your family. So go see your doctor. And if you are feeling generous, you could go, if you follow me on Instagram, which some of you might, I have a link on my profile there to my JDRF fundraising page for the one walk that I already did, but they still have the link up if you ever want to send a few dollars the JDRF way. I would greatly appreciate it because I really hope that they can cure this disease so I don't have to wear friggin' machine 24 hours a day attached to my body so that I don't die. Anyways, so I'm done being Debbie Downer, and we'll get back to the Mead of Poets. And here's my sad substitution for mead. I just have some Riesling, but I mean, I like Riesling better.
Hey.
So who cares?
Do you like mead?
I've had it a long time ago. It wasn't my favorite. I probably should try it again.
Was it sweet mead or sour mead?
It was sweet. There's no way I would have tried the sour.
So you like white wine, but you don't like your drier white wine, so you don't care.
I like dry white wines. I don't like sweet white wines. This is a dry Riesling. I like the dry.
Okay.
Like I'll usually, if I don't know what to get, I'll order the driest white on the menu.
You're drinking Kung Fu Girl, right?
What'd you say? Yeah, Kung Fu Girl. It's not.
Money.
It's not the driest white, but it's drier. It's dry enough for me. But yeah.
It's like I love Sauvignon Blanc, especially in the summer.
I'm not a huge Sauvignon Blanc fan. I don't know why. Like if I want a summer thing, I'll just go like Vino Verde sometimes because there's a really cheap one that I like.
Well, generally in the summer I go Hendrix and tonic. But
well, yeah, that too.
If I'm doing wine, like I like Sauv Blanc. I like Chardonnays are a bit heavy for summer. They're great.
I keep Chardonnay. I don't drink it.
I like Chardonnay in spring.
And I know there's like a wide variety, and people have tried to convince me that there's a Chardonnay out there for me, and I've tried a whole bunch of them, and every time I'm just like, no thanks. But especially the buttery ones, I hate those.
Yeah, for me, I'm more seasonal than food pairing, even given my like restaurant background.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's more seasonal. And a lot of the food I eat, you can pair with a lot of different grapes.
Okay.
Like salmon, which I know you hate, but there are like 6 different grapes that are great to pair salmon with. Lamb.
Yeah, no, this is your job, so you know more than I know. I have terrible taste, and I'm picky and only drink the things that I like.
I just have terrible taste in women. I have good taste in women.
That works. Okay. So anyways, so there's that tangent. Enjoy your wine, guys.
Yes, we are going into why bad poetry exists.
That doesn't come till the end.
No, but
this is an important. It's the important lesson.
This is a great chapter, and if you don't mind, I'd like to start it off with once again the first 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
Do you wonder where poetry comes from? Where we get the songs we sing and the tales we tell? Do you ever ask yourself how it is that some people can dream great, wise, beautiful dreams and pass those dreams on as poetry to the world, to be sung and retold as long as the sun rises and sets, as long as the moon will wax and wane? Have you ever wondered why some people make beautiful songs and poems and tales, and some of us do not? It's a long story, and it does no credit to anyone. There's murder in it, and trickery, lies, foolishness, seduction, and pursuit. Listen, And right there, I think that sums up what this book does so well, which is, as we were talking about earlier, you feel like somebody's reading you these stories, or just telling them out of their head. Like you're sitting around a fire, and Dark Mother, who I'm not sure is still here, but was out there.
She was definitely here earlier.
At a certain time of day, twice a day, sitting around with your friends telling stories can be really awesome. But even when it's not that time of day, sitting around with your friends telling stories can be pretty awesome.
Cool. Sorry, I'm responding to the chat. I apologize.
No, not at all.
And
yes, AK, you're right. Neil Gaiman does read the Norse Mythology audiobook.
Oh, that's good.
He tries to do as many of his audiobooks as he can. I think you and I may have spoken about this. Did you? Coraline was originally created as an audiobook.
Yes, I think you mentioned this. You might have mentioned this last week in the stream.
Yeah. Okay. And he decided to print it because it had such a good response. But he wrote it to be an audiobook, which, if you read or listen to the original text, makes sense. I mean, that's the reason I talk about this man once a week. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. I appreciate when an author reads their own work. I know that not all of them can, obviously, but
some of them are dead.
This is true. But I mean, even the ones who are not, sometimes they're a little bit busy to, they don't want to take the time to read their own book when they know that there's people out there who can do an excellent job. But the only audiobook I've ever really fully listened to, because I get distracted too easily sometimes if I'm just listening to on audio, is the only book I ever did was when I was 16. I had to read the Joy Luck Club for my English class in high school, and I was like, I had flute lessons, piano lessons, marching band practice, marching football games that I had to go to because I was in marching band. I had other stuff. I was working a few days a week. Like I had zero free time. So I got the book on tape out of the library, and it was read by Amy Tan. And I really appreciated listening to that book on tape because, the names too, the author read them properly. I didn't have to guess at how to pronounce all these characters' Chinese names correctly. And it was just, there was a nice feel to she did a really good job reading her own book. I liked it. But at the same time, like, I'm not a huge audiobook person because
No, nor am I, but I do. One of my favorite possessions that I own, a friend of mine gave me, and it's the selected works of Edgar Allan Poe read by Vincent Price and Basil Rathbone.
Vincent Price, okay.
Like Vincent Price reading Edgar Allan Poe, Vincent Price reading the fucking Raven.
Yeah, that's great.
You really can't beat that.
Yeah.
Basil Rathbone reading the Fall of the House of Usher.
Oh, nice. I haven't read that in forever. Hey, Laura. Hasty.
And interesting sidebar. So I got the idea because as many copies of Edgar Allan Poe's work as I have, there was selected works of Edgar Allan Poe put out, I believe, in 1999. And the introduction was written by Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
And he said that the reason that he felt he wanted to put this compilation together is because he was listening to that while he was going from one convention that he had to be at in Massachusetts to another that he had to be at in Florida. And he's driving the Appalachian Highway in the dark, in the middle of the night, with Vincent Price reading Edgar Allan Poe.
So he took the back roads then.
Yeah.
Because I've done the trip at least from Florida to New York City, driving as a child many times, and it's not like if you're taking the back road, it's going to take you even longer. So,
but it's prettier.
Yeah, that's true. But there's,
not in the middle of the night though. But like, imagine driving through these mountain roads.
Yeah, through these beautiful places.
No street lights in the middle of the freaking night with Vincent Price
reading The Raven,
reading Edgar Allan Poe to
you.
Yeah. Like,
I meant to go to there was an Edgar Allan Poe museum in Philly that I had wanted to check out when I was there a couple weeks ago, and I didn't make it there. So,
if you get a chance, go check out. I mean, you're relatively close to Baltimore. Go check out his house.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty cool. I mean,
when I think Baltimore, I always think John Waters instead of Edgar Allan Poe. But yeah.
I can understand that.
Sometimes. What happened?
Oh, I just said I can understand that.
Yeah. Watch enough of his movies, you remember that.
A little more modern, and you don't have all that cousin fucking, 13-year-old cousin fucking to wrap your head around. So I can get it. At least as far as I know, John Waters never had sex with one of 13-year-old
probably
cousins.
didn't, but you can never put it past anybody.
It's Hollywood, man. You never know.
All right, so perhaps we should get back to the meat of poets.
I mean, the guy who produced The Lord of the Rings, the producer for The Lord of the Rings, was Harry fucking Weinstein.
Oh, true.
So
Harvey, you mean?
Harvey, yeah. Sorry.
Not that it matters that we got his name wrong. Who the f cares? But, he was a powerful guy, but despicable. All right, so essentially, what happened at the beginning of the story is that all of the Aesir and Vanir spit into a vat, which, initially I'm just like, cool opening, gross. But and then I forget who it was that suggested we should make a man.
That was exactly my reaction. Was cool but gross.
Yeah, like interesting but really disgusting.
Like, I get it. I was brought up in a slightly more visceral and pagan culture than I believe you were. Like, I understand the whole spit and blood thing. Like, but it still grosses me out. Not the blood part, the spit part grosses me out. Like, the blood part, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, blood does not usually bother me.
Actually, that's why I look so young.
Because of blood?
Yeah, it's that whole Elizabeth Bathory thing.
Cool. I did watch that episode of that show Lore on Amazon about Elizabeth Bathory. So, fun story there. But anyways, just the worst female serial killer, and perhaps an inspiration for many creepy characters in many stories.
Inspiration for Cradle of Filth's greatest album.
Sorry?
Inspiration for Cradle of Filth's greatest album.
There we go. All righty. So they decided to make a man, and his name was Kvasir. And he was the wisest man ever because he was a combination of all the gods. He was their head and their heart. So eventually he said, I'm the wisest, but in order to be truly wise, I need to travel all the nine worlds, and he does that.
So I have a question here that I wanted to ask you. I wanted to pick your brain for.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he also has Votan's wisdom from the Well of Mimir?
It's possible that he has some of it because some of that spit was Odin's, right?
Yeah, all the gods.
Yeah. So at the very least, he got the portion that was available in Odin's spit. And we know that, spit contains DNA because I've done 23andMe. I regret it because now they have my information. But, we know that that's all it takes to get DNA. They didn't know that, but, just worked out that way. So yeah, this Kvasir man has the combined DNA of all of the Aesir and Vanir. Um, and I didn't write everything down, but eventually he's in this location, and we meet these elves called Fjalar and Galar. And they made these vats called Son and Bodin, and Odravir, the ecstasy giver, is a kettle. Um, and so they approach Kvasir when he's talking to people in their neighborhood, or near their neighborhood. They come to him, they approach him. We have something we want to share with you, um, but it has to be in private. So, which he should have, being the wisest man, he should have been wary of this situation where it was like couldn't be in public. But
he was like he knew what was going to happen.
yeah, like I think he might have known his destiny anyways.
And that's another recurring motif in Nordic mythology is destiny.
Yeah.
Like a very recurring motif. I think outside of Judeo-Christian mythology, there might be more of a sense of destiny in Nordic mythology than any other uh, form of worship. And I mean, if you want to get into a sociological discussion, like I wonder if that's the reason that the Franks and the Nords and the Swedes were so easily compared to Gauls and Hungarians. Uh, Communicated to this belief system. I mean, don't worry, I'm a Catholic. Like we're obsessed with guilt. That's what we do. It's guilt. It's all guilt.
Yeah, I know. I have family.
It's all guilt. The only people who have more guilt than us are Hasidic Jews, and that's just because they read the same book and they take it even more seriously.
Yeah.
At least we can drink. Which, by the way, you said Kung Fu Girl.
Yes.
I'm drinking some Cutty Sark tonight.
Oh, nice.
I wanted to get mead.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to drive to the good liquor store. I just wanted to go to the cheap liquor store.
That works.
Because this is my Saturday, and I was like, yeah.
You're like, it's fine.
Nah.
Isn't there, like, I'm sure there's some YouTube video we could look up to make our own mead, but I'm not ever going to do that.
I have a good friend who makes mead. Yeah. Actually, a few. There's actually you. Are you familiar with Slide the Tank Benjamin?
Yes, we did a video together.
He makes amazing mead.
He makes his. I forgot that he makes his own mead. Yeah. I know they talk about their beer all the time on their other podcasts.
We got Scotch drunk one night at Ice and FireCon, and then we got mead drunk the next night. Because he's not a Scotch person, and that's my drink.
Oh, okay.
And
I am familiar with Scotch.
But his mead was amazing.
That's good.
But it had been sitting for like a year, so it was like 19 freaking %. So it's like mead. You're drinking it like you drink a beer, like really fast or whatever. And then you're like, my feet aren't working right.
Yeah. It's like, no, you're just really wasted. Okay. So, what did they say? So did Kvasir kind of knew they were gonna kill him, right? Yeah,
Oh yeah,
he said you're gonna kill me and use me to make the meat of wisdom or whatever.
I I think it's worded really well here. How can you be so wise when you don't know things? And then Visir, Visir, Forrest, if you're still out there, please correct me because I know I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
Kvasir?
Not in a resigned way. It seems to me that if you're both intelligent and evil, you might have decided to kill your visitor and let his blood flow into the vats, Sun and Wooden. And
Sorry,
then
that
he
was
just
my Robo Icelandic again.
and then heat his blood gently in your kettle, wouldn't you? My German pronunciation is so bad. I apologize to anybody out there from Germanic
What do you say
countries.
for the kettle? You're
Yeah.
saying the name of the kettle? The kettle is tough to say because of all the R's, but like Odrir. Let me see if I can put that.
Odre.
Yeah. Make the computer say it. Let's see. Odrir. Yeah. Whatever. So that was the kettle where they then sort of boiled down his blood to make the mead.
Right. Well, I love that he's resigned about it. He's like, they're like, oh, if you were so smart, you'd know what was going to happen. And he's like, yeah, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah. It's like, no, I get it. So then it transitions after all of this to there's this giant named Gilling who they owed something to, or something was going on. And because they were, they're buoyed up by the fact that they were so successful at killing Kvasir and stealing the meat of wisdom, that they're decide we're going to kill this Gilling. They row him out to sea and they drown him. And then he comes back and his wife is wailing and horrible. So they took her out to where he was killed and they kill her too because, I can't stand the wailing of women or whatever, like Joff. But, they got rid of them because that's their problem with them gone. And then everything's good for the two elves. And one day they wake up and they realize they are not in their home. They realize they are on the same rowboat that they had rowed out with the people they killed. And it's their son who came and took them and rowed them out to where his father was killed. So he ties them up. He's going to put them on the rocks and wait for high tide to come so that they will drown just like his father.
That seems fair to me.
Yeah. And they're begging.
I would do that.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just exacting justice. I'm not going beyond that. I'm just going to do to you what you did to him. But anyways, they're begging for their lives, and eventually said, we will give you the meat of wisdom for your lives, for our lives. And that's what happens. And I think there's a gap in my notes. And Odin knows that something is up and tells the gods to make the vats, right?
Yes. I do want to say something that I put in my notes. Is this paragraph? They gave the gods Kvasir's bloodless body to take back to Asgard.
Yes, I forgot about that. Sorry.
And perhaps because gods are not as others, and death is not always permanent for them. Mm-hmm. For a god's eventual return.
Yeah, they don't mention anything else about that. He just drops that in the story here.
No, and that's what
And
I
he
think is
doesn't
so
come back
great
in the
about his
story.
writing style.
Yeah. But he lets the little thought there where like perhaps things could work out and etc. So after Odin told them to build the vats, um, he's going on his quest to find the mead, and he said, I need this, amazing whetstone that we have, and I need the drill auger called Rati.
Have you ever sharpened a blade with a whetstone?
I've never sharpened a blade ever, so no.
It
I tend to have terrible knives that don't cut anything.
it takes a significant amount of time.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, we hear about it in the stories that we read. Like these people will sit there with their whetstones for a very long time.
Some people do that just as a stress relief, especially if it's like
Like a meditative thing almost, yeah.
if it's a blade you're using for combative purposes.
Yeah, you're gonna have to
I'm
use
just talking like in a kitchen.
Yeah, I've never sharpened
Like
anything even small.
you go to any restaurant, uh, they've got a steel that any chef will be happy to point out for you. They're not going to loan you their stone. I mean, for one thing, they cost about $70.
Yeah, if they have one that's really good, they're not gonna just
And
get rid of it.
but we're talking about kitchen knives here. I have a lot of. I have a number of items that are significantly larger than kitchen blades, and it takes a long time. It you know. Please, if you're a weapons enthusiast out there, a budding weapons enthusiast,
Bear Island Josh says he restores and hones vintage straight razors.
Josh, I need a new one.
I'm
Get in touch with me. I have your
glad you like my
DM
Joffrey quote.
information because I need a new straight razor. That's how I learned to shave. Like I learned to shave from my grandpa with a straight razor. I hate using disposable razors.
I learned to shave by stealing a razor from my mom's bathroom because I was tired of my legs being hairy. So, and I didn't want to use Nair. This was the 90s. Nair was like not dangerous yet. Whatever. Anyways, so I did not need a whetstone for my like lady bix. So the mead eventually they found out was hidden away, guarded in a mountain, guarded by Sutung, who is the son who went to kill the guys who killed his parents. Guarded by his daughter named Gunlod. And the mountain's name was Nipjorg. Nipjorg. I'm not sure. There wasn't an umlaut, so it's like Nipjorg. And so he found out that this is where the mead is stored. But then we find out in the story, like, Odin doesn't go straight to the mountain. He goes instead to Sutung's brother's place, and his name is Baugi.
Big, yeah.
Yeah. And he has 9 slaves working the fields. These
what
are
Germanic language speech I understand is just like pinch the words inside your mouth. And most of the time you'll sound okay.
I was taught that if there was an umlaut on the vowel, it's often pronounced closer to its name in English.
Yeah, like pinch the words inside your mouth, like biggie. And like I said, and I'm not insulting any Nordic languages or anything like that.
It's just how they developed.
It's just not how I'm trained. I can give you 17 different conjugations of I am if you'd like.
What
Not
do you
very
mean?
useful.
17 different languages?
Oh no, 17 different conjugations just in Latin.
Different ways to say.
I was
just
exaggerating. They're only 6, but
okay. Yeah, I don't remember much from my 6th grade Latin class. I just also remember that word
I
order
tend
was
to
not super
exaggerate.
important. Sorry?
I tend to exaggerate.
Yeah. Well, word order is not super important in Latin because endings were changed on words to describe their part of speech, um, or their function within a sentence. Um, so when he goes to Bogey's farm, he sees his 9 slaves out there cutting the fields with scythes, and he offers to sharpen them with his, you know, amazing whetstone, um, which made their scythes so sharp that their job was going to be just like so amazingly easy past that point. And he's trying to get them to go after the whetstone. Um, and they're saying like, "Oh, we have to be careful. We can't come closer because our scythes are so sharp now. We can't possibly um, come any closer." And then he tricked them into jumping up for the whetstone because he threw it in the air, and they all wound up murdering each other. So here's Odin being very sneaky again.
Yeah, once again, it gets back to Odin is a deceptive god, but he's not a trickster god.
Yeah.
Now, the tricksters pull off better tricks, but then they pull off really worse ones, too.
Yeah. And this scene, I mean, I know that a lot of depictions of Odin have him carrying like a scythe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just reminded me of that. Like, how Odin is so associated with like the idea of like the Reaper, you know? Um, but anyways, um,
Well, I've always found it interesting because in Greco-Egyptian mythology, Hermes and Thoth are patrons of travelers, merchants, doctors, and thieves, whereas Odin is the patron of travelers, death, thieves, and merchants.
yeah, he's not, even though he's the All Father, he's not associated with anything really positive, you know?
Well, you think about it like doctors are the ultimate thieves, right?
I think you made this joke last week, but I don't know what you mean.
It's not a joke; it's a point.
Oh,
It,
got it,
it,
got it, got it.
it's
Yeah.
I mean, to steal from death. You want to pull off a bigger heist? Like
Maybe.
you're stealing from death, and that's what doctors do. They steal from death.
Mm-hmm.
But Odin's a death god, whereas the majority of your, what I love about polytheistic mythologies is that what I love in it, it's an interesting paradigm for me as a person of faith in the faith that I have, is studying these religions where your gods are pretty fallible. I mean, they do dumb shit.
Yeah, they're closer to people.
Yeah, exactly. Exaggerated people is even the
Yeah.
way I would put it. Like Zeus is an exaggerated. Zeus is just a serial rapist. Like, I mean, describe it some other way. Clean it up, but am I right?
But he's also that, yes.
Like, back to the swan thing. I mean, come on. Or turning it, Io into a cow.
I gotta go back and review my Greek myths. I don't know any of these things.
Or like, impregnating somebody in mist form.
Oh yeah,
Like
gross.
that's like some Dracula shit.
don't like to think about it.
Sorry.
But anyways, I'm like, I don't want to get like impregnated by the fog because no, thank you. Um, but anyways, so where we left off, Odin then goes into the house and asks Baugi for lodging for the night, and he introduces himself as Bolverker, um, the worker of terrible things. So already the guy's like, are you sure that's your name? That's a terrible name. But, he said he can do more than the work of the 9 people he just lost. And sorry if my screen jumped up and down. I kicked the table that I have my computer on.
Well, I can understand having this kind of name. I mean, you know what John means?
No, I know what Sarah means.
Well, John can mean two things. One is that it's a person who hires a prostitute.
Oh, well, yeah. I know that. I thought you meant like the name original meaning.
Traditionally, it means beloved by God.
Yeah. I was like,
Take your choice.
that's a little bit nicer than like, oh, she was caught with a John. Or, there's another meaning where it's like the toilet. So cool.
Yeah, and there's that.
Sarah doesn't really take on extra meanings. So I'm glad for that. And I don't like that my name means princess, but whatever.
Literally, princess of the people, if I remember correctly, right?
I just know it as princess, but it's a Hebrew name. It's an ancient name.
Yeah,
Abraham's
those
wife.
are the people. I took Hebrew a long time ago in school.
I took 0 Hebrew, so um, so
I
he's
think
like,
you're a princess.
oh, thank you. I hated playing princess in Super Mario Brothers 2 because I never got used to her movement, but sometimes I liked playing her. That's the only princess I think of when I think of princess. What was I gonna say? So he wanted to trade his work for just a taste of his brother's mead. Just like, oh, I just want the ittiest bit. He can't deny me that if I do all this work. And initially he said, oh no. So eventually Buggy caved and said, okay, yes, we will do that. You did all this work wonderfully. And when they went to Situng to say, like, oh, this is my new friend, Bolverker. He was amazing. He really helped me out. Let's just give him the tiniest sip of the mead because, those were my parents too that were killed. So, this recompensate, I can't say that word.
Recompensates?
Yeah, like this, you were compensated for a parent's death with this mead. Technically, some of it should belong to me. They were my parents too. And he was just like, no. So, then Odin suggests, we can climb the mountain and get it ourselves because it's wrong that your brother said no. And they climbed up the mountain, and Odin was traveling just as fast as this giant man, even though he wasn't a giant, which should have, clued Baugi into the fact that he was not who he said he was. And they heard Gunlod singing, so they knew they were in the right spot. And he says to Baugi, take this auger here and drill a hole in this mountain. So he's drilling, and I'm trying to think of the details now. Eventually,
he drills and he says, "Oh, there we are."
Yeah. Eventually, it's like, okay, we got it now. And Odin is realizing that
yeah,
he's about to be betrayed. Sorry?
Oh, I just said Vuitton leads up, and he breathes into it, and
the dust doesn't come back out of it anymore; it goes in. So he
first the dust comes back at him.
Yeah. So he makes it do it again.
Very, very.
So he knows that he's not done, so he does it again. And then eventually, it's all the way done, and Odin realizes that Baugi was going to betray him, so he immediately turns into a snake. So that, because Baugi's trying to basically hit him with this giant auger, this giant drill. So Odin turned into snake form, went inside to the mountain, and when he got there, he transformed himself again into this giant who was extremely handsome. Because he's gonna work his wily ways on Gunnar.
That's what Odin does.
Yeah, he figures out the best way to get what he wants, and he does it. Um, so he approaches her. There's seemingly no way that he would have gotten in there, but she's talking to him anyways. And he says that, oh, I came here because I heard you were beautiful and strong for protecting all of this. I just wanted to, be here to see your beauty. And he just kept complimenting her and complimenting her, and eventually it worked. So he convinced her to, they were kissing, and then they had sex, and eventually said, oh, can I please just have a sip of the mead so I could write a poem about your lips? And I'm like, I don't know which lips he's referring to, but I'm gonna assume both pairs. So he kept the compliments going, and more sex and more kisses and more this to get her eventually to let him into the locked room where the mead is, open the door, and um, along the way while they're traveling, she also showed him kind of where he was supposedly not paying very much attention, but he was noticing. She would point out like, oh, here's a window or here's a door where my father is, comes and sneaks food and stuff for me into the mountain so that I can remain at my post. And so when they eventually got to the vats, his one sip of each drained them completely. And so she then realized that, oh yes, it was a trick, and goes to attack him. And he was able to run out and pull the door shut to trap her in with the empty vats. And then Odin knew he had to then change forms and become an eagle. So while she's realizing that she was tricked and betrayed and this and that, Gunlod is now screaming, just ridiculous screaming, and that screaming is then what Suttung hears, and he sees an eagle in the sky, and he immediately knows what went wrong, because Suttung has been sipping this mead as well from time to time himself, so he's obviously very wise at this point. So he sees the eagle, hears the screams, and knows that something went wrong. Do you want to say anything before I continue?
Yeah, I think there's a very interesting point here. This paragraph, I'm just going to read the whole paragraph.
Cool.
Perhaps, but you have so many perfect features. Picking the best is so difficult. But if I were to take the tiniest taste from the vat called Boden, the poetry would enter my soul, and I would be able to make a poem about your lips that would last until the sun is eaten by a wolf.
I missed that detail when I was writing my notes down.
I think you might want to just put that in your waistcoat pocket.
Yeah. So save that thought for later.
And maybe it'll be brought up for another time. But he always just keeps saying only the tiniest sip. And then he shags her again.
Yeah.
Every time. It's
like, oh, I just need a sip. And she's like, I don't know. And then he's like, okay, well, I'll screw her again so that I can convince her. Okay, one more round.
Apparently Vuitton has like the D. Like he's got it going on.
Yeah.
He's like the male equivalent of Casey's mom.
Okay. Trying to think. What is?
I'm sorry. Was that in bad taste?
No, it's fine. I have terrible taste. So.
And he promises another poem for each sip that he tastes.
Yeah, I think he's gonna do 3 poems because he's gonna take a sip from each.
And by sip, it means drinking it all up.
Means the whole thing, yeah. So he drank all of it, became the eagle, and once Suttung realizes what's going on, he also changed forms to an eagle. So, because giants are magical creatures, they can also just change forms at the drop of a hat, apparently. And so Thor is, not Thor. Thor is in my notes for the next part.
3.
So Odin is flying as fast as he can to Asgard, so that he, Suttung does not catch him. I think Thor saw the eagles in the sky and was like, "It's time. We need these bats." So they pulled the bats out. As Odin is coming into Asgard, he begins to spit to fill these vats with the mead of knowledge. And then it says, now it is known that people who have the gift of poetry and weaving tales have tasted the mead of poetry. And then after that is your favorite part.
It's brilliant. I'm just going to read it. That was the story of mead of poetry and how it was given to the world. Story filled with dishonor and deceit. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Like, do you think anybody is decent in this story? Like, is anybody good?
No. Everybody's
maybe good, Nia.
Each other.
I mean, could she like?
Maybe the daughter.
Yeah.
Gunlad. She's
Gunlad.
with positive intentions the whole time. Like she didn't have anything to do with possibly killing the elves or anything. Like she's just trying to protect this thing that her father got in exchange for the death of his parents.
Right. And then she's like, shit, you've got that Loki deed. Yeah. Man.
And she's just sitting alone inside the mountain with nobody to talk to or play with other than herself.
Yeah, you've got this pretty
really
fucking
that this man is complimenting her and doing all sorts of sexual things with her.
Yeah, you got this pretty boy come up and he's like, oh hey, let's hang out.
Yeah, because it says he did not transform himself just into any old man. He transformed himself into a hot man. He was like, I gotta make sure this works. This girl is lonely.
Do you think he still had a fake eye?
Oh, you want to know if he had one eye the whole time or if he had both in his transformation?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
or do you think it just wore sunglasses? Like
maybe. Yeah.
Jin Saint Baptiste. By the way, since Sasuke is joining this channel, if anybody has any mythological reference that they might want to give her a new name, please do so.
For a new nickname?
Yeah. I mean, I'm Jin Saint Baptiste. And if you watched American Gods.
Jin because of American Gods, yeah. I know that part. I haven't seen season 2 or read. Season 1 covers more than what I've actually read in the book so far. So I didn't even get to the Jin in the books.
Let me tell you about the show. It adds a lot on. And I think it's well done. I think it's quite well done.
Yeah.
As someone who's read that book as many times as I have, I think what is added on to make it a
cohesive as a TV show?
Cohesive as a TV show, and also from a financial standpoint to make it episodic.
Yeah. Because a book comes around in a different way than a TV show normally would.
I think the things that have been added are good.
I'm just bummed that I know that Gillian Anderson won't be back.
Yes, this is true.
Because she's the best, but whatever.
I like Gillian Anderson.
I haven't watched X-Files in a while. I'll have to go back. But
once you start season 2, you'll get to see new media. And I think what they did is absolutely fucking brilliant.
Okay.
So you watch the first episode
on the one side,
2.
but Gain on the other. I'm
not going to give any drops.
Okay.
I don't do spoiler. I don't do teasers. I don't do if a trailer comes out for a movie I want to watch when I'm in the cinema, I'll walk out and go to the bathroom.
Okay.
So I don't do that to anybody else.
Yeah.
If you want, there's plenty of shit you can look up there online.
Of
But no. What they did to make new media, I think is absolutely fracking brilliant.
Okay.
And it's not Gillian Anderson, but
It's still great.
The way it's done is absolutely brilliant.
Wonderful. Okay. Well,
but
we have to get back to the best part of this story.
Yes. Well, before we get back to the best part of the story, I was mentioning. Oh shit! What was I talking about? I'm looking over my notes. I'm sorry. What were we talking about before?
You were reading from the end of the chapter.
Yes. Okay. So this is the story
Saying how
about
it
how
wasn't
native
a good
poetry and how it was
just a
given to
scene.
the world.
Yeah.
It's a story filled with dishonor and deceit. I love that. I love that Gaiman doesn't try and clean this up at all.
No.
Like, no, it's shady and sketchy and it's bad. And something we're going to touch on for a minute here. And I would like to touch on for significantly more than a minute next time you come in here. Is Wagner's Ring Cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And do you like any of these people? Like Brunhilde? Yeah. But outside of her, like, do
you're
you
not
like
necessarily supposed to like them.
anybody? They're all a bunch of dicks.
Yeah.
Like Siegfried.
The only one I've liked so far in the chapters that we've read, as far as the gods go, that I've definitely like, okay, I can see myself liking this one, is Tyr, because he was respectful to Fenrir. And I have to go back and read the other chapters. Like, so far, like, Freya came off okay in these chapters, but it doesn't mean that she doesn't come off as less than okay in other chapters.
You'd totally go out for a party night with Loki, though, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, he would be so fun. But like, you'd still be like really afraid of what might happen.
That's what makes it so
You'd go
fun,
out
right?
for him, but you'd be like, no way are we sleeping together. No way. I can't drink that much. I can't let anything happen. I gotta keep my senses about me. He's gonna screw with everybody. But it would be a fun night. So, anyways.
Somebody asked me, I had this question, like, I guess this was years ago, when I still had a Snapchat page. And
I only associate it with dirty pictures, so.
If I could party with 3 people for one night, who would they be? And my choice was Emily Dickinson, Hunter S. Thompson, and Caligula.
I just watched on Netflix.
Because, like, Caligula, I would not want to be on his bad side, but oh my god, on his good. Like, could you imagine a drug binge with Caligula? Like, that would just be awesome.
No, but I just.
And then you got Hunter S. and Emily Dickinson. It's like, you're a misanthrope. You're a misanthrope.
It's gonna work out.
Make friends.
But
I want to see what kind of conversations you guys have. I'm just gonna sit here in the corner and chain smoke.
Okay. Bringing up Caligula, though, there is a thing that I was just recommended to watch a little while ago on Netflix, where it's about the Roman Empire. They've had 3 series now, and the most recent one I think is on Caligula, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And they had their other series one was on Caesar, and one, I think the first one, maybe Caesar was on, I'm gonna say the name wrong. It's
next would be Augustus.
No. Augustus was mentioned, but they might be doing an Augustus one later. But they did Marcus
Claudius.
Aurelius and his son. Commodon. I can't say it because I can't remember. Comma something. But he was very much a little.
That's like 200 years
after Caesar. Yeah, they're not in order. They're not.
Okay.
They're not. It's just like that's the story they chose to focus on, and it's not. It's
Commodus.
like a recreated.
Yes, thank you, Forrest Blurred. Got it.
Commodus. Thank you. I knew I was almost there. Commodus. Yes. So I watched the one that was most recent was Caligula, because I was like, I know details about Caligula, but I don't know a lot. And I liked it. And it was interesting just to see how, like, before he was what he's more known for, what his life was like.
Well, also always something that I guess now we're done with the stream proper, so we can talk about whatever.
We didn't talk about the excellent ending to the story yet.
Yes, we will in a moment. But with Caligula, one has to take into consideration that this was written by Suetonius. And then some other authors after that, but they were even further from. Like, Caligula had been dead for 64 years when Suetonius wrote about
when they finally wrote all that down?
Right.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, like, we can't take everything at face value.
It's like reading the fucking London Star.
Yeah. So, and of course, and that's what it's sort of like a docu-series in that they have actors portraying these figures, but it's interspersed with professors and stuff that are specialized in this field.
Oh no, I'm talking about the
just the story in general.
The stories of Caligula that we have been handed down. The people fucking loved him.
What happened?
The people loved him.
Oh yeah, because he was so much better than Tiberius.
Like the people adored him.
Yeah, and then he started sleeping with his sister, and that was weird.
And the people were still fine with that.
They were still like, oh, I guess.
I mean, my sister's pretty hot, but I don't know if I'd sleep with her.
Well, and it was, the way it was presented was it was the sister's idea. He wouldn't have necessarily come up with that idea himself.
And his upbringing, like you're living under Tiberius's axe for your entire fucking youth.
So his brain is already completely messed up because he's been living in distress for his entire childhood. So his brain is already not like at the normal level that people who've had a happy childhood would have. And he was kept, he was essentially a prisoner his whole life. And then eventually he became very Tiberius-like in certain ways. I also liked the show itself. If people want to check it out, I was very happy to notice, I was like, oh, I recognize all these people playing. The guy who played Tiberius played Solonius in Spartacus. And I was just like, hey, I know him. So they clearly filmed all of the acting portions in New Zealand because it was all these Kiwi actors.
But Catherine Harding joined us.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I said hello to her in the chat, and then I forgot to mention it out loud. I'm very sorry. Hello, Catherine.
Not at all.
But yeah.
Yeah, hopefully you can.
Catherine Harding. I'm
if you have the time,
I love it.
Come back.
Oh, sorry. I just covered up what John was saying.
Oh, no, not at all. Please, you say what you.
Oh, no. If you're talking about that you love the show Spartacus, I agree. I love the show Spartacus. I became very weirdly obsessed with it by watching it. And it's not just because it's kind of porny, but, and because I became strangely obsessed with men's thighs by watching it. But it's interesting and it's well done. But once you get used to the visual style of it, I loved it. And
I'm not going to impress you. My thighs are very
sorry. Well, these are all dudes that probably had to go to like essentially like gladiator camp or whatever for several months before they did any filming. So, you know, they were being paid to like get sweet muscles because they were going to walk around in, you know,
One of my
gladiator
favorite quotes. Who is the
gladiator panties for months and months.
who is the guy who played Leonidas in
Gerard Butler.
300?
Gerard Butler, Scottish.
Yeah, he had to go on a special diet to get in that kind of shape. Like
To
I'm
look
in
that
decent
part,
shape.
yeah.
Like I'm in decent shape. Like I outside of the ridiculous amounts of
The
alcohol.
majority of your calories are some on some nights alcohol.
But they asked him. It was an interview, I believe, with Rolling Stone, and they were like, "Oh, are you going to stick to the diet you did for the show?" Because a lot of people think that like that shit was airbrushed. No,
No, they had to get so freaking ripped.
no, they got that ripped,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Oh, are you going
At
to
least
stick?"
they were being
He's
paid
like,
to do so.
"No, I like beer and potatoes."
Yeah. He's like, no, I want to eat normal food again and be a normal person. Yeah. Catherine just said men's thighs, thumbs up, and I agreed. You know, whatever.
I have chicken legs. Women don't chase
You'd
me.
have to do amazing work in the gym to get even close, but
I have chicken legs.
yeah, whatever. It's
But I
fine.
do have that low key mouth.
Okay, cool. But anyways, so yeah.
That's my only selling trait.
So yeah, Catherine, if you want to check out this Roman history thing on Netflix, you'll recognize Good Salonius is playing terrible Tiberius. Salonius was like a really weird character in that show, by the way.
I love when an actor can keep themselves from getting typecast. Like I feel bad for the wee little lad who played Joffrey.
Oh yeah, that he's like had to swear off of acting for a bit because
I can't remember even remember his name.
Jack Gleason.
Jack Gleason, thank you.
Yeah. He's
Like
a sweet, very smart little Irish kid, and now everybody hates him.
I don't want him to come into the Jack Nicholson trap or the Harrison Ford trap, where you just get typecast as a certain type of character, and that's all you can do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But I think with him, it wasn't being typecast. It was that like people were so obsessed with the show, and he did such a good job as Joff that like all the dummies out there.
Oh no, I'm saying from here on out, he may be typecast.
Oh, but he's already like sworn off acting for a bit,
And hopefully, like that, taking a break from it can let him.
if he decides to come back.
Because he's a bloody fucking good actor.
Well, yeah, he's great, and he was in other stuff when he was younger too. He was in one of the Batman movies, I think. But anyways, yeah. So what were we saying? Okay, so should we now talk about the very lovely ending to this chapter?
I think it's a lovely ending. So
it's a great ending. Lovely is probably less than appropriate, but whatever.
No, it's given in the text.
Yeah.
That it may not be appropriate for all readers. I don't remember. No, I love that because that makes it hilarious, and as someone who writes, that's fucking brilliant because it makes you want to read that next paragraph.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm trying to find it in my own text.
As a writer, I think it's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, so Odin, and the only decent person in this story is Gunnlod.
Mm-hmm. And perhaps Kvasir, who's not a real person, he's a spit person.
Yeah.
Who's now a vat of mead.
But Gunnlod is like, you know.
Yeah, the person with good intentions, for sure.
And one of the lines that I noted was that oh, I have to go back a page. But I thought it was terribly funny.
Yeah, the delicate among you should stop your ears or read no further. And then the last two paragraphs describe. Do you want to read the last two paragraphs out
I
loud? Or
do,
do you
but
want me to give my weird,
I wanted to
my weird summary?
throw out this part first. And I can't find it now.
Well, perhaps if you can't find it, maybe next stream you can mention it.
Oh, but we do have to mention that I would be able to make a poem about your lips that would last until the sun is eaten by a wolf.
Yeah, you said that already. So we got to keep that in mind for the rest of the book.
I think that's a very important point.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to read the last two paragraphs or do you want me to read them?
The last two paragraphs. Here's the last thing, and a shameful admission it is. When the All-Father in eagle form had almost reached the vats, with Suchig immediately behind him, Odin blew some meat out of his behind. A splattery, wet fart of foul-smelling mead right in Suchig's face, blinding the giant and throwing him off Odin's trail. No one then or now wanted to drink of the mead that came out of Odin's arse. But whenever you hear bad poets declaiming their bad poetry, filled with foolish similes and ugly rhymes, you will know which of the meads they have tasted.
So, did they have the mouth mead or the shark mead? I'm going to start a band called Shark Mead. It's going to be really bad poetry.
Actually, there's a band called Shark Meat already.
Okay. I'll have to sue them for the rights to the name. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the.
If you want anybody who has information about like rare out there industrial bands who might be able to sue you for taking their name, that's one of them.
Okay.
I think they're from like Long Island or some shit like that.
Oh, then I could just, take the train and go meet them. But okay, so we've been going for 2 3/4 hours. So perhaps we should wrap it up so that people have time to go have a glass of water and do what they got to do before they're going to join Mackenzie's stream at 8:30.
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah.
I still need to watch that show, so I will not be watching live at Mackenzie's channel, but I'm watching Harlots tonight.
Yeah, I might poke my head.
Tonight's my Friday night.
Yeah. Yeah, I told them I'm going to try to figure out a way to watch it because I don't have Hulu. And then I will attempt to join the streams eventually.
But did anybody have any thoughts about any of these stories? Any ideas?
Yes. So Forrest, yes, you can finally go pee, of course. Yeah,
and
if
I do have a question.
that you want to remark on.
Will you come back here and join me, Sasa?
Next week?
Next week or in a few
Whenever?
weeks, whatever's convenient for you?
Yeah, maybe I know next week, are you going to be, just to mention next week because it's existing, are you going to be at the same time because isn't next week Thanksgiving?
Same Odin time, same Odin place.
Okay. So, cool. And like I said, I know that you had wanted to mention the connections between Norse mythology and Wagner's operas, and I'll try to look up more information on that stuff to help you talk about that eventually. Um, I'm not as much of an opera aficionado as you are, even though
No, but you're a
I
hell of a
went
music
to study
aficionado. I
classical
mean,
music in college. Um,
it's like what you
it
do
was
for a
never my
living.
jam.
Like
Sorry?
I get rich people drunk for a living. You
Yes, you got to be able to do something with
do
it.
music for a living.
Yeah. But yeah. But yeah, I just and I know there's like this like subgroup of not only like classical music of nerds, but opera nerds, and then people that are just like ring cycle obsessives. And I'm not necessarily one of them, but one of
No,
the
no,
things
and that's actually why I value your opinion so highly, is because you're a music aficionado. You're not a Wagner obsessive.
so I'm not gonna be like, oh, it's this and that and the other.
Like
Okay,
I'm obsessed with Wagner. He's my favorite Nazi of all time.
okay.
And if you know me, you know that's a very sarcastic comment, because yeah, Wagner said and did and thought some very bad shit, but it doesn't take away from the music that he made. At least I don't think it does.
You can appreciate the music on its own, but
I don't think it diminishes
you
it.
don't want to appreciate that it was him.
Mozart was a 12-year-old who liked fart jokes
Yeah, don't we all? He was
and
a 35-year-old.
lived to 33 and got syphilis, but he was still a fucking 12-year-old.
I
Like,
don't think he had syphilis. I think everybody else after him did.
Beethoven was an absolute cunt.
Oh, Beethoven was horrible, but he also he had a horrible life, and he was giving himself lead poisoning through all the wine he was drinking. So he was in constant pain in his stomach, and he tried to. He
I don't
almost
have
killed
any
himself.
lead
He was in love.
poisoning.
He was in love with a woman he couldn't have, and of course he was deaf, and his uncle beat him when he was a child, and all of that stuff that we already know. But he transformed all of classical music and transitioned the classical era into the romantic era. He changed the symphony. He did a lot of things for like his late string quartets. But anyway,
Beethoven
we're
was
not here to talk
fucking.
about Beethoven.
One thing that uh, you're a wind player,
Yes. So Mozart hated the flute, but eventually he met a decent flute player and decided
and
to
he
try.
loved him,
What happened?
and he loved him.
The guy who changed his mind about flutes, yes, he loved him. He appreciated that finally somebody was able to play the instrument in tune. So
And
he could,
Beethoven came
but he was playing it
into
more.
and Beethoven came into the whole school of Mozart, which was winds and strings. And Beethoven is like, we've got brass. Let's fucking do this. Like, let's make this happen.
Well, brass instruments
I mean,
became,
not as much as say Brahms, but
but Brahms was much
Beethoven
later.
Beethoven loved his brass.
But like for example, even in Beethoven's era, he could do more with brass in a way than people before him, because for the longest time, a brass instrument, you'd have to have individual instruments based on a certain pitch, because you could only play the overtone series of the pitch it was based on. We didn't have valves. So the only instrument that could play everything chromatically was a trombone or a sackbut before the trombone, because it had a slide. Everything else didn't have slides. They didn't have valves yet. You just used your embouchure, so you could only play the overtone series from the fundamental note. So even in Beethoven's time, even in like Eroica, you had to like, okay, and in this phrase, I'm gonna have to switch to my C horn, and in this phrase, I'm gonna change to my E flat horn, because I think the opening to Eroica was in E flat. But like So they even had to write their music based around the fact that they knew the brass players were going to have to literally put their mouthpiece on a new instrument between phrases, so they couldn't have them directly lined up against each other if the notes weren't available to them. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
By the way, anybody who wants good, proper music knowledge, talk to Sasuke. She knows what she's talking about 10 times better than I do.
There's people that are definitely better at it than me. I did not go to the best conservatory around. And I feel
I
like
didn't go to any fucking conservatory. I just threw records for.
But there are other people out there that some of you guys know, and other people in your own lives that may be just as educated, if not more so, than I am. You can also, of course, talk to them.
Yeah, but Sasuke is a lot nicer.
Sometimes.
And far less self aggrandizing.
Sure. Anyway, so we've been going for 2 hours and 51 minutes. I know some of these people are. Dark Mother actually came all the way back and was surprised we were still going.
Yeah, and we're going to pop over for anybody who wants to. Mackenzie is talking about Harlots tonight, which, from what I understand, is a great show. I will not be on the live stream tonight in the chat because this is a show I really want to watch. And I'm not just going to pop in and say
you
my
don't want
own
to get
thoughts
spoiled.
before I watch it. A lot of people do that. A lot of people don't realize how much people do that.
There was I know that like the first Watchmen stream that Johnny did, I popped in just to be like, hello. I haven't watched this yet. I just want to say hello. And somebody in the chat said to me, actually, I'm gonna watch this now, and then from that I'll decide if I'm gonna go watch the real show. And I'm like, teach his own, do what you gotta do. But yeah, I don't know if I could do that. I don't want to be like pre-spoiled. Or
Yeah,
like,
but
I
I'm
don't be
excited
aware
about
of
checking it
being
out. It's something I can check out without paying extra money for, which is nice. Like I already pay for cable, HBO, Stars, Amazon Prime,
yeah.
all this. I haven't watched The Mandalorian yet. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I haven't watched it. I'm just gonna wait for it to come out on DVD.
I'm not gonna do any more streaming services because I have enough distractions and I don't even have cable anymore. You know what I mean? So like I'm not good at utilizing my time. So that's part of the reason why I don't have something like Hulu, even though it's fairly affordable. And I know that some people just gank other people's passwords or whatever, but like I just don't. I had BritBox for a while because I was obsessed with British television, but I don't know.
No, I mean, I don't even know why I pay for my cable. Like, I get stoned and then I put on Science Channel.
All I used to watch when I had cable, I was so exhausted with work that I would like, my brain would be dead by the time I came home. So half the time I couldn't process like good shows or movies that you had to think. But I would DVR like some of the dumbest shows, and I would watch. I told my friend I was mainly only watching like animal shows and the show The Dead Files on Travel Channel, which if you guys haven't seen is an absolute gem and it's so dumb and I love it. But yeah, I was barely watching anything, and cable here with my cable and internet, it was costing me like $175 a month once it went back up to the real price. So I just was like, I'm not.
Right? No, understood.
Yeah.
Absolutely understood. All right, well, friends, we're going to sign out here. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody who's here: Catherine Harding, Dark Mother, of course, Sasuke. Brown Holler was here for a minute. Glad I didn't have any trolls because she's the one spanner that rules them all. Peter Griffin, Forrest Huerta.
I know it's very late there.
Sorry?
I'm just saying, Forrest just said good night, so I'm saying good night, Forrest, because I know it's very late where she is.
Yeah, Forrest. It's got to be like fucking 6 in the morning or some shit
Hope
like
you
that.
took a nap before you came and watched.
By the way, my language is the reason that this is not rated for kids.
Yeah.
We have to do that now with YouTube. I know you don't have a YouTube channel, Sarah.
Yeah, but when you put out the streams, you have to signify
this is for kids or this is not for kids, and
well, they have to cover their own butts that way too. Like,
dude, we're talking. Oh no, I completely understand it, and we're talking about like giant sex and
yeah, how like Odin essentially,
and Thor rubbing his dick.
well, yeah, and Thor with his my Thor and King Missile's detachable penis analogy, or the fact that Odin essentially like he took advantage of Gunlod
3 times.
Yeah.
Like she's the only decent person in that story.
Like she didn't want to have sex with him. I mean, she did because she was
Well,
swept
she
away.
did.
She did, but she wouldn't have if she had any inkling that he wasn't who he said he was. Even though she was probably very lonely, and I understand girls gotta do sometimes, but like, he was not cool. But anyways, some other people that were here that might not be here anymore. We had Bear Island Josh, of course. We had Lady Laura Dane for a little bit. We had
Bear Island Josh, your
for a
gift
little
is
bit.
sitting here.
Oh, I
It's
think
getting mailed in 4 days. You'll have it for the holidays. Share it with kids.
Yeah, we had Alicia. We had Mandy. Who else did we have? Trying to scroll up without taking too much time, but
Mackenzie Alburns.
yeah, she was here very early, right? We had
By the
Bobby
way,
for
you
a
ought to
little
pop
bit.
over to her channel next.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some harlots. I've never spoken of harlots, never once, not ever in my life.
Yeah, I just got my notification that Mackenzie's live in 30 minutes, so hopefully you guys did too if you put her on your notification bell settings or whatever.
But thank you all for coming out. Next week we'll be talking probably about, I'm guessing, chapters 9 and 10 because they're very long.
They're longer? Okay. Yeah, and I'm sorry we did like 3 hours, guys.
You want to join me?
We could have done a whole stream on just the first story. You don't need more than one chapter for a stream, to be honest.
Yeah. Takes a long time though.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Sasuke wants to join me next week, that would be great. If not,
maybe the following.
Fair enough. But in the meantime, all of you, please check out all these amazing content creators we've talked about tonight.
Tomorrow night, come see me face off against Kev from Bridge 4 on the West Rosie Ninjas channel. He was here for a hot minute too. Tomorrow night at this time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to get my ass handed to me by Kev with some Song of Ice and Fire trivia and hopefully some additional categories as well, not just George R. R. Martin trivia, but we'll see. And he's the returning champion, so we'll see if he can keep his title.
Nice. Very nice. If you have time, please drop down in the comment section or go to my social media and vote. Do you want playlists on Mondays or Saturdays? It's playlist with curation. Like, I'll talk all about the tracks. I just can't do that more than once a week anymore. With my new job, I just do not have the time. Somebody asked, why don't you do both? And I think it might have come across as sarcastic, but I didn't mean it that way. And it takes me 12 to 15 hours to put together a playlist. Because, especially since it's thematic, I have to listen to, for every, 10-track list you get, I listen to 50 tracks. And I figure out what figures in for that perfectly. And then on top of that, I have to do all the curation on that. So, I can only do one a week. Do you want it for the weekend or do you want it for the week? You want to start your work day on Monday? My work day on Monday is like the middle of the week for me. Like my Monday is Saturday.
And how is your Saturday?
Do it.
So you said, oh, your Monday for your work week is Saturday.
My Monday is Saturday.
So if
Today
you
is my
put it out,
Saturday.
say you decide to put it out on Saturday, it would mean that you would do all the work the previous 2 days, and then you would drop it on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I'd probably do it like a week
Or
ago.
you would drop it on Saturday
A
because
lot of
your
people don't
weekend.
know that. Most content creators who aren't doing live things, they make their content way ahead of time.
Yeah, they have to. It's the best way to make sure that it's, that they keep to a schedule and that they give themselves enough time.
Except I don't do edits. So if
Okay.
I fuck something up, I have to totally start
Oopsies.
all over again from the beginning.
Oh, okay. It's just that you choose not to do edits, or
I like it. I feel like it's a little more honest.
okay.
A little cleaner. A little more dirty at the same time, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But yeah, so vote if you like Monday or Saturday better. Let me know. The next playlist will drop on Monday or Saturday, and it will involve. Actually, it will be talking about something that I've already done one playlist about, but I think doing a second playlist will be good. And I might even bring music trivia back, as long as I think people are going to answer it.
Yeah, do it. I
Because a lot
personally,
of times people just don't answer the music trivia, and I'm like, I came up with this brilliant thing, and nobody even has an answer, or gives a fuck. But we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. In the meantime, all of you, please be excellent to one another. Believe and party on.
bye, guys.